get a regular water. You got time for that?
Ain't nobody got time for that.
You want another water too?
Yes, please.
You want me to refill that, or you want another one of those ones?
This was not water. I'll take just a new glass of water. This one's like half, so that's fine. I appreciate it. Thank you.
#41 live stream. You don't die?
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks. The damn level on it. Okay. Yeah, that is fortunately awfully close. There we go. That's a little better. This is not a full shrinking mass though, right?
Greetings, gamers, and welcome to the 41st live stream from the Misfit Gamer Studios. I'm your host, Vortex, and this is D&D Discussions. On today's homebrew, Kage has brought back some modifications for his subclass in the Druid series of the Circle of the Leaf. So we're going to go over that, and then afterwards we're also going to be covering some more spells of his players that he wants to bring in. They're small time, I think, just, quick little things that we're going to be able to go over. So we're going to try to go over a couple of those, and then we'll see where the conversation takes us, just as always. You might have already heard, because I didn't realize that our mics weren't muted, but Kage stepped out for just a second. So we're going to wait till he comes back in to start up everything. Hope everyone's doing well. If you are watching this on Twitch, well, welcome. And if you are watching this on YouTube in the future, hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a comment and let us know what you think. And if you'd like, join the Discord. In fact, if you do want to submit your own, you can via our Discord. Link is now in chat. Kage just got back, so let's go ahead. We'll open this up, and we'll get started with today's homebrew review. How you doing on today, on this Monday? On today, yes. How are you doing on today?
On today, I do.
That is a normal human greeting.
Listen,
if you didn't know,
that's how we roll out here. On what you're talking about.
It's a very human thing to say.
Exactly.
On today.
On today.
All right. Actually, I didn't even. I hit enter for no good darn reason.
This is where
there
it's
we go.
at.
Now it is in chat, ladies and gentlemen. Now the link is in chat. And if you're on there on YouTube, unfortunately, you'll just have to read it and type it in manually. We don't have a way right now. Well, I don't know.
We can always put it in the comments.
You know what?
Or the description.
Can you double check? Can you actually pop over to YouTube?
I can.
I don't know if OBS is smart enough to post it in both chats.
Ooh, that's an interesting...
This is actually because I've been... For those who have not seen the original episodes or haven't been here for a while, I've been dual streaming to YouTube primarily to save the footage because they will automatically save everything while Twitch only saves it for a couple days. And this has been great because eventually I can get those files, I can turn those into future content, and at least I don't waste anything for anybody who wants to see what we've already talked about. But I haven't really considered the integration. I don't think anybody really watches me on YouTube. I don't think there's any live viewers typically.
I feel like YouTube's a harder platform for that medium, so that's probably the case. They're
picking up. It's because I think they're trying to get into the Twitch game.
Yes.
So it is touch and go. I don't think. You know what's interesting though, and what I think is a fascinating turn of events is they started doing the live streaming a little bit more. I think YouTube has started to push itself into live streaming more, and Twitch recently opened the floodgates. So typically, one of the things that's been really weighing on my mind because we're at 29 followers now, and once you hit 50.
Impressive.
Once we hit 50, we have a chance to be affiliate. That's the minimum that we'll have to make once we can be affiliate. And that just means that we can potentially monetize. We can open up more emotes, more interactions with chat. Just gives us, opportunity for subs and things like that. So it means a lot more responsibility for us, and that's fine. But it did previously take away my ability to multicast, which means at that time,
interesting,
I was going to have to make a huge decision. Forgo the affiliate for now, or take the affiliate, kind of be more serious. And I don't mean take this as a job or anything,
right.
But take it more serious and
be more consistent.
Put the money into a new computer and hardware and a couple SSD drives that I could download the videos and then repost them to YouTube a day later, because that used to be the rule. You could live stream and you could do all of that, but you had to wait a time frame. So basically Twitch had to have dibs on it for a time frame. I think it was a day or two. And then they were yeah, you can share the video whenever you want after 48 hours or after 24 hours or something.
But
basically
for a while, we want to be the platform that they come
it's it was here live, we get the exclusive rights to it, and then go do what you want. So as we approached that was one of the things I was considering is, what do I want to do? Do I want to forego the chance of building the community even better by that time? Or do I want to upgrade all the equipment?
Right.
But recently, Twitch announced that you can multicast. They allow it now.
Oh,
So
okay.
I'm partially wondering if that's preemptively before YouTube gets a handle on how to be good at it.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if Twitch is doing that to be okay, that's cool. You might be a threat if we were competitors, so we'll just let people you as a side option.
Right.
Now, and what is happening? All my favorite streamers, what do? You still watch them, like especially the ones that make YouTube content. Usually their Twitch chat is in there.
Mm-hmm.
They do the same exact thing. They're live streaming on YouTube, but it's their Twitch chat. So they're still streaming live on Twitch.
Right,
They're
right.
multicasting to YouTube, but they interact with the Twitch audience. They get apparently you can get alerts from YouTube.
Really?
So they still get the alerts from people who like donate or sub or who subscribe. But you can't see, you don't really, unless you have like another window up, you can't really
unless they
see
like
their
put
chat.
it on their in window chat or
So
something
you can potentially see it, but like other Twitch chat and people watching the live stream won't see it. So yeah, I think it's an interesting move. I think it's fantastic. I think it's a good move, but at the same time, I'm wondering if it's to get ahead of the fact that if YouTube came out and figured out a way to make it better, right? Because right now, no one rivals Twitch. I mean, it's purely in the numbers. No one rivals Twitch. But if YouTube, I mean, being YouTube and backed by Google, if they were to figure out the formula, right? If they were to figure out how to do it, what better? I mean, they could rival Twitch, and I don't mean that they would take them over. I don't think that everybody would just leave, but there would be a strong divide. There would definitely be a very large community shift of Twitch streamers and YouTube streamers, right?
Yes.
I think by doing this, they've immediately bridged that gap, and we're like, they're still going to be Twitch streamers, but they go live on your channel, right?
Yes.
I don't know if it's necessarily that underhanded. I like to maybe, dress it up like that. But I think it's preliminary a good move for them to basically be like, yeah, we'll play nice. Like, we see what you're trying to do, but if we make it access easy first,
we still want to be like the proprietors.
Because they took the first step, right? Because they basically said, hey, we're, because YouTube doesn't care. YouTube never had the exclusive live, right? Mm-hmm. So by Twitch taking kind of, not necessarily the first step, but Twitch being like, okay, that's cool. Like, yeah, we're not going to like cut that off. We see that you're trying to get bigger. So if we do the partnership, there's less of a reason for people to leave primarily using us, right?
Right.
Instead of casting to us, we still want them to have the presence here. We want the audience. We want the interactions. But you can also have, your audience who, like me. I'm a prime example of what Twitch is okay with YouTube having. I'm much more of I will subscribe, I will watch, and I will interact with my streamers and the Twitch streamers I watch on Twitch. But once in a while, if I'm just chilling out on my couch and just on my TV, being able to pull up YouTube and see my favorite streamer, I'm just going to sit there and veg all night or all day. Or I'm going to have them on in the background while I'm around the house. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to be engaged in the Twitch chat. So therefore, having him on YouTube on another device is a way for me to just get his content, right? I can still watch my favorite streamers. And I don't have to wait for their YouTube video, because that's normally it. If I see one of them live and I'm in the front room or I'm doing something else, I can't immediately switch to Twitch and watch them live. Yeah. So I wait a day or two for their YouTube video about it, which is shorter, easier to consume, and with all the edits. But nowadays, if I'm cleaning the house, if I'm cooking, I can throw on the YouTube their YouTube live stream, and bam, I can just get it unedited, and then later recap what I missed because I was busy.
Right.
But Twitch doesn't care about the content part, right? That's YouTube's gig. But the fact that I'm going to use YouTube to watch people live, but not to interact with them, just to kind of have them as the content, I think Twitch could be okay with that, because what they want is the interactive audience. They don't want the bystander audience. That's why that's why they have the whole thing where if you turn a stream off, if you mute it, or mute the window and not mute it, it won't count against the streamer. Well, it won't count against them, but it won't count for them. So you can't just have someone like load you up and then mute you, or mute the whole window. It notices that.
Interesting.
So the only way to get around that is you actually have to set it to like one volume.
Interesting.
You can set the Twitch volume to one volume, and then you could set like your browser volume to one, and then do all your other stuff, and that still counts. But it's that concept, right? They don't want the dead weight. They don't want the viewership. They want the interaction. Yeah. That's why I think it's a perfect move for them to let the multicast happen, because that's exactly what everyone wanted, right? A lot of the good and famous Twitch streamers, they make YouTube content out of their streams. This just makes it 10 times easier and more accessible to that YouTube audience like me. Like,
Right.
I'm a 50-50, right? I watch people on Twitch, but I also watch a lot of it more on YouTube because that's primarily where I sit down and watch things.
And
Twitch is
you're
just
gonna,
something
yeah.
I'll just pull up when I'm at my computer, but I will typically watch them on YouTube. And that's, I'm only going to interact when I'm on Twitch, and that's, I think it's a good thing. I think it's going to be great
No, I think
because
that's
most
a-
of them
it's a
are
good
already
move.
doing that. And I think it keeps them with Twitch, right? I think it keeps everything consistent. There's not going to be a major shift in how things look or how things feel. It's basically just going to be a continuation.
Right. I'm here for it. I'm for sure here for it.
All right. But yeah, that was a long-winded way to say that we don't no longer have to worry about what we do, business as usual.
It'll just
and we'll
be-
just, instead of having to worry about upgrading my computer and my storage, now I can actually focus next year. The goal is to focus on the equipment. So cameras and microphones are going to be hopefully like the next big upgrade that we'll be seeing here in the next couple months. Have a couple things in the background I'm working on, and if everything goes to plan this week, the stream will start to improve.
I like it. I like it.
Ironically, that sounds like something that has to do with the stream, and it has nothing to do with the stream. It's just something else in my main life. But if things go well over there, then I will have the means to be able to improve the stream, which will be nice.
No, it's a good deal.
So, don't see anything in chat. So, what are we doing today? We are looking at your subclass.
Yes.
You had brought back some modifications.
So I'm weird. Like whenever I'm on like TikTok or something and I see one of those weird videos and it's like, am I the asshole or something like that? And
So,
then I know
I'm getting kind of... it's not that it's bad. The content's not bad. I'm just getting tired that that's like the new thing. Like everybody's
overuse it
doing
for sure.
it.
But
I'm just... Oh my God.
I always get weirdly excited when I found one that I really enjoyed, and then they have and then they go back and they're like, "Oh, give you more information on it." That's lightweight how I feel about this. So I wanted to I went back over the episode where we first talked about the subclass, and I was looking over all the things that we were talking about, a lot of the different issues, or not necessarily issues, but just different ways to implement
The perspective,
the idea of what I had out there. And so I was honestly, I was taking a look at it and I was like, oh, there might be some other ways to do this that solve a lot of problems innately. And so I started playing around with it, and I got to a place where I'm fairly comfortable with the main feature. And I actually kind of renamed it, I think. But I'm fairly comfortable with the way the main feature works. And again, I was comfortable before, but now I have more perspective. So, I think it addresses a lot of the...
I think this is also a great example of showing that I think a lot of people, I always say that, I think a lot of people, but I think that there are people out there that can relate to this. I think that's what I mean when I say that there are a lot of people. I think it's an easier way for my brain to get across the mindset that there's probably people out there that can relate, ergo there's a lot of people out there that feel this way. But I don't mean there's a lot of people as in there's a statistical amount. I should probably get used to more saying
90% of people. No.
Yeah, no. So there's probably a good amount of people that can relate to the fact that sometimes people will create, the DMs will create something, and even they may not be 100% okay with it, or some other people may bring up critique. But regardless of how much time they put into it, I think that there is a subset of people who will, either by stubbornness or by just lack of motivation, keep it with either what we would call the first draft, or keep it once they've called it done, it's done, right? And obviously there's always a point to where you call it done, right? A publishing point or whatever. But I think just in general, I think there's a point to where people will say, once they've presented it, so not necessarily the done point, but I think that a lot of people suffer from just I've done this before. I personally have done this where I'll create something and I just don't want to go back to it, and I'm happy with it, But even if someone brings up a really good point, if it's not a good enough point to say, hey, it violates a rule, or
Right.
if it's just more of a, yeah, that sounds like it could be better.
I'm just
like, but it's like, I'm, it's not even stubbornness. It's not saying I don't like that you're better than, I don't want your idea to be better than mine. It's just more of a, yeah, that sounds like work.
Is it going to be worth the effort I'm going to have to put forth to make it that much better?
Exactly.
I'm like,
And that's really...
And that's fair. And that's very fair.
I think a lot of people can relate to that. I think
Yeah.
that is something that is a good example to show that it can be worth sitting on it. You know, there's a lot of people... I don't know. Now that I've brought it up...
You always gonna hear it.
That's all... Hear yeah. Well, so considering, too, it's similar to in music, right? There's two types... There can be two types of approaches. There's the methodical, written down, going off of what I've pre-wrote.
Right.
And then there's another approach of I'm just going to go, once I hear the music, I'm going to get in the booth and I'm going to go with it and we're just going to work with it, right? Yeah. And I think there's the same thing with D&D write-ups. And with the approach, regardless of how many drafts you may do, the initial approach of here I've shown it, I don't want to work on it anymore, can be kind of akin to I'm in the booth, I've done it, I've play tested it, instead of the more methodical aspect of have you sat on it, have you just sat back and not thought about it for a while, come back to it, especially after either not even like a criticism session, but even after talking about it out loud to somebody, because I've done that so many times where I've spent months, multiple revisions, and I'm like, this is lock solid. And then I say it out loud, and halfway through, I'm like, oh, nope, that's changing.
Yes,
nope, that doesn't work.
I cannot tell you. Yep.
Because when you're in your head, it's so easy to see all the pieces being put together, but once you say it out loud, for me at least, the experience is that like third person point of view of
because then you're actually audibly hearing it instead of just like internally hearing it,
right? And then you're hearing it for what it is, not for what you're intending it to be, and then you're just like, yep, nope, I don't like that.
I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes even I have to go a step further because I'll read it the way I intended it, even if it's not written the way I intended it. So I'll have to I have the thing on my phone where I can have it audibly play it back to me. Mm-hmm. So I'm not even the one reading it. My phone's reading it back to me. And so
without inflection.
Exactly. Just completely raw. And then I hear any sort of like weird or awkwardness or whatever.
You know what, though? Thinking about that, for those that have a more meta kind of group that like everybody's kind of involved in the building of the story, that's not just like hidden behind someone's notebook, or for those of you who have groups of DMs, this would actually be a fantastic exercise. So talking about how you can be better, what you can practice, this would be great because essentially when you write something up and you've polished it up, hand it to someone else and say, hey, this is a spell. Read it to me and tell me what it is. Like, just basically do not give them background. Do not give them any of your intent, your inflection, right? If you've written this up, hand it to someone and say, and don't tell them like, read this, what do you think? But tell them, hey, like, I if I were to ask you about this spell, if I were to ask you to recommend me a spell and this was the spell you recommended me, like give them a scenario in which they read it, again, without context, but they read it to you the way they would interpret it.
Right.
So if you've written it to mean it does this, but you say, hey, like, if you were to read it, whatever your context is, read this out loud to me. And you read it and they obviously are doing this. And you're like, I thought it so clearly. Yes. But you hear them read it and go, no, I see I see why you're. And so that's a great exercise. And I think you and I maybe should do, I guess that's what we do on Homebrew Review. When we bring stuff, like when we did my Deceptor class, you know what I mean? I kind of ragged on myself about how I wrote it. But no. Excellent exercise. Hand your work over, especially if you're in a meta group that is okay, where you're not trying to hide everything, or just if you have people that you can go to, have them read it without your context, not without context. Tell them it's a spell. Tell them it's a class. Mm-hmm. Tell them tell them what it is, but don't tell them why.
Have you heard that audio clip recently? There is a bunch of like, I feel like they're Australians and they're chanting at some sort of game.
And it's which
like,
one do you hear?
You hear it, and then you say whatever it is that you hear, but then someone tells you, "Do you hear this?"
And you hear that
I
too.
hear that. And to me, a lot of the times, like, okay, I wrote
good
this
example.
intending this, but then you read it hearing this, and then I look at what you're understanding. I'm like, I can kind of see that. I can kind of get where you're seeing that. So either I need to go back and specify so that I either intentionally exclude that, or I keep that into consideration and make that a part of what the possibility is. So, you know,
100%. That's a good example.
It's very interesting, but I definitely like that a lot.
I've never really thought about, from that point of view, I've never really thought about homebrew review that way, like you know what we do here. And I guess that really is it too, because people are sending this to us, and if they give us the backstory, that's great, but us reading it, you know, the rules that they've set, I think that is actually hopefully helpful. You know, Cosmic can probably attest, of Love Murder Roses here, maybe they can attest as well, but I think that is kind of maybe a good exercise, is being able to read what someone wrote and hear what their first interpretation. And I don't mean what's your first gut feeling of whether you like it or not, but when you write something about damage, how does it read? How did you interpret that damage was supposed to be taken? Or how do you interpret this set of scenarios? Like, how many times have we read something and we're like, that's not how I interpret it. You read more and you're like, oh, that makes it more helpful. So then the question is this one of those things where it is just always going to be on the reader to continue reading? Because that sometimes you can't avoid that.
Yeah.
Or is that a clue to tell you, hey, if you rearrange how this writes, you could get ahead of this question. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Instead of saying for every charge spent, X, Y, Z can happen, and you're like, okay, but how do you get charges? Charges are recouped, blah, blah, blah. So if you were to go, oh, that's a constant question, is, well, why are the chart, you know, you suddenly bring up charges, but we haven't talked about it. So if you say, this comes with 3 charges refreshed every single day, the use of each charge does X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
You have no question. You're like, oh, I have charges. What's the next question? What do they
The
do?
answer right
And
there,
what's
yeah.
what's the first thing they're going to do? Continue. Like, that's not a question they'll ask. It's the first thing they're going to do is keep reading for that. Whereas if you mention a charge, they're immediately going to be like, oh, wait, why do I get charges?
I also, if you notice, whenever we do our reviews, there will be times where we'll go off on a tangent before we finish reading whatever it is. But a lot of the times, we, based upon our preconception, we'll start bringing out solutions. We'll have like ideas of like different ways we can go with what we've read already. Now,
Right.
even if the problem we're trying to solve isn't even a problem in the first place because we didn't finish reading, it still did spark that avenue of inspiration that can then blossom into whatever else might be. So
Right. And hopefully
you know,
these ideas are, you know, my biggest hope is not necessarily sparking ideas from the people that we, you know, that submitted or that we review from, but other people, right? If people are kind of like us, the idea of, I like this idea, but it doesn't quite work for me. Or hopefully our tangents, if anything, spark someone else to go, I don't really like that either, but now that you're giving me these ideas, I want to do this. You know, like, that's my biggest hope, is that our tangents lead to other people's tangents.
Right.
I don't necessarily want to be the one who says, oh, you know, I don't necessarily want everyone to be like, oh, I took this idea because you came up with it. I just want to spark the idea train. I want them to take some kind of modification we made and go, oh, I never thought about modifying it like that. So what if I go this way with it? You know what I mean? Like, that's what I get most excited for, is I want to see people, I want to see what people create. You know what I mean? I don't want to just say, hey, here's something I would do, use it. I want people to be like, that's cool, but what about this?
I like it.
Hey, Cosmic, what's going on? Glad to see you in chat once again. What do you got for us today? Whatever the Wednesday group session is going to be, it's gonna suck. Why is it gonna suck? We pissed off the ancient gold dragon. Oh, and
Remember,
I
that's
perceived
what
possible TPK.
He did mention that last time he was in chat. That
Do you guys have any like? If you have any preliminary like preparation? Well, I guess no. It's a session, right? You just straight up pissed it off, and
You
you're
just need
about
a
to go right
bard.
into the
You
thing.
just need a bard to seduce that sucker, man. Call it a day. Although
Put it to sleep.
I did hear about a DM that was like, all right, you want to seduce this dragon? They got their nat 20 and seduce the dragon or whatever. Well, they slowly revealed to their character the symptoms of them being pregnant.
Lol. That's fucking hilarious.
It was so great just to see the look on that player's face when they go to a tavern and like try and order some alcohol, and the barmaid is like a lightweight healer, and she's like, "Are you sure you want to do that, lass? You should be drinking your condition. When's the last time you've been to a doctor?"
Oh, just like
And
just
she's
like just hinting at it every
what
time.
do you mean been to a doctor? And she's like, cleric, will you come check me out? And then cleric, having seen a lot of the signs throughout the time, was like, what kind of roll do I need to see if she's pregnant? And they're all just like, oh, it was ridiculous.
Oh, like even the
Absolutely.
players had like no actual.
Well, the
clue.
actual player was fairly oblivious, like, cause. Yeah, and the other players around the table, I guess, just kind of let that person
Stay oblivious. Oh my
in
God.
ignorance, and they were.
Hey,
all
you know what? Like I
snickering to
said though, player agency, like you're a party, but y'all have your own agendas, right? Both in and out of game. Players have their own agendas. Characters have their own agendas. The party has its own agenda.
Facts.
The playing group has its own agenda. The DM has his own agenda, and the DM, at least in my opinion, a good DM will have individual agendas with every single one of the players as well.
For sure.
So I'm just saying, like, you know, playing towards those is great. I fucking got stabbed harvesting those pomegranates, and
Disrespectful.
so I did that this weekend. So I think it was on Sunday. So just yesterday. But we just pulled out the thorn earlier. Like I didn't even notice it until just recently.
Hate when that happens.
And so it's just like, this is just like
Extra fun.
just irritating. Just an irritating spot. We got it all. It's just irritating because it was sitting there for, a fucking day. I can't believe I didn't notice it. How do you not notice something like that?
It's happened to me.
Like,
I've had one of those like tiny little slivers from like a splinter or glass or something just stuck somewhere and not realize it till I step on it the wrong way or just like rest on it the wrong way. And I'm like, all right, whatever.
and then it pokes in the correct
and
direction.
then I'm like, where is that pain coming from?
Because like I said, it's a female dragon. They do have 2 bards in the group, but neither of them are the seduction type.
Bro, they're all the seduction type. Just kidding. Just kidding. I'm not here to stereotype bards.
Yes, you are.
Only a little bit. Anywho.
So yes, do you have any notes specifically about the changes that you made from what was to what is, or do you just have the current version?
Technically have the old version still. So actually, let me pull up both versions if you want to actually compare them side by side, which is actually not a bad idea.
No, I mean we don't have to go like through every detail,
well,
but
for
just,
sure.
just from what you had, you could walk us through what changes you made. It's a little bit of a new type of homebrew review. We didn't have any submissions this week, but I did like the fact that he wanted to modify it a bit based off of the prior conversation. So I am really curious, like what your thought process was, and again, why you made the changes.
Right. There it is. Okay. So this should be the original version. Okay. Are you gonna... All right. Perfect. Cool beans. Okay. So, my very original version was called Overgrown Earth. And, because of how I wanted to reflavor it a little bit, I changed it up, and now it is called Deeply Rooted.
Ooh.
And
Rooted. That just
Yes.
sounds good.
It's kind of cool, and the envision that I have is like, you know, roots like grow out and through the earth, and they like pop up, and they like kind of destroy the area. So the effect is still the same. These roots are just destroying whatever like rubble and stuff is like in the area.
And I like the visual more because it calls the idea that you are calling upon roots that are so deep and that you're pulling them up. And that's instead of just the idea that they're just there. I love this idea that it's just like, from the depths, bring these roots up.
So before the first time around, the area of effect was a 10-foot radius at first. So I wanted to think about this kind of logistically, and if the vine whips out, because last time there was an aspect of it where you can have a vine come out and grab a target.
Yeah.
So the way I set it up is now the radius is a 15-foot radius. So the way it should work is, say somebody gets grappled with this, and then they end up getting pulled. If they are at the limit of this vine, because the vine's going to be 25 feet. So 15 foot for the inner radius, and then another 10 feet. So if some creature is moving within 10 feet of the external radius, that's when I can activate this ability and shoot the root or the vine, the whatever, at this creature that's moving.
Gotcha.
And that's and so if I grab them and if I stop them, right, they're right there, they're at the edge of it. I pull them 10 feet. Now they're just past the edge. So they're at the because the radius is 15 feet, right? So if I pull them 10 feet, they go the
So
first
they're
5
inside.
feet, and now they're inside.
Right.
And then the next time they get pulled another 10 feet, and now they're adjacent to it. So I wanted to make sure there were a full 2 10-foot pulls, which I needed to adjust the size of it. Otherwise, it would be a 10-foot pull and then a 5-foot pull to the center, because you're not going to occupy that space, and then it'll let them go. So like it just made it make a little bit more sense to change the radius, change how it worked a little bit.
I like that too, because especially if you're scaling up what happens to them, like the closer they get, the worse it gets. The idea that they have more options to struggle out, I like that.
And that was the next part that I adjusted, was how the actual everything works. So I'm going to read the new version, and then we'll basically talk about what aspects of it are different. Let's do this right. Let's see.
You didn't send it to me for
image.
to pull up, did you?
No, I can if you would like.
If you think it would be visually helpful, but I mean, if you just want to read it out, that's fine too.
Yeah. Let's just start with this. So, as a reaction to a creature moving within reach, so within 25 feet of the center, or specifically within 10 feet of the perimeter.
Gotcha.
You can cause vines or roots to burst from the center. And I know we talked a little bit about the depiction of like what it actually looks like. And I was thinking about that just a little bit, and I kind of like how, even though sometimes in like spells they'll like say what it's supposed to look like, I really like the idea, like we were talking about the other day, of kind of giving the freedom to whatever this particular player is to describe what it looks like to them.
Gotcha.
Like I'll give you the mechanical, this is what it does, but what is the manifestation?
But it's up to them to describe like the mechanics, because it's going to really be a manifestation of their character.
Very much so.
So if their character is, a whip user, it will probably look more whippish. Whereas if
Maybe
they're
have
more
thorns on it or something like that.
Yeah, whereas if you have like a ranger, more a ranged fighter, they may want more of like a like a spring shot, or like a more of a spear kind of concept. So
And so I
enough,
wanted to give that freedom. So it is a vine, whether it's like a sentient vine that goes at you like a snake, or whether it like whips out at you. I think that what the ultimate goal is it's going to reach out and it's going to try and grapple you, right? Easy enough. So
I like that freedom. I like giving that to the players, especially for your setting. Works perfect.
right. Center. Okay, the vine bursts from the center of the area and restricts their movement. The vine's reach is 10 feet beyond the radius of the rooted area. The vine's AC is 10, and the HP is 5 times your proficiency modifier. So basically, your proficiency modifier is pretty low. So at first level, it's like a 2. So
Yeah.
5 times 2 is going to be 10. It's got 10 hit points. Not a whole lot, right? It'll probably take 1 or 2 hits for somebody to destroy that, right?
Oh yeah,
All right, and
easy,
so
easy to. I would say on average 2-3.
right, and as you level up, your proficiency modifier doesn't go up right away. So it's not going to have like a whole lot of hit points. It's meant to go down in 1 or 2
But
hits.
the most it's gonna have is what you get 5 proficiency. I think you can get up to 5.
I think you
Maybe
max out at
6?
7. Do you max out at 7? I'm not 100% sure. Let me...
So I mean, we're talking about the worst. When you are max level, this thing's gonna have like 35 hit points.
yes,
That's a single hit and it's gone.
yeah, but that's a level 20.
Yeah, no, that's
You
my
know
point.
what I
That's what I'm saying. It's like when you look at the level up,
Very much so.
it's one of those. It will probably have more damage at that point too. So it'll be more like how cantrips are to you at first level. It will be like that at 20th level, but early on, it is kind of an OP thing to be able to do. Yeah.
But also think about
But I mean,
how-
OP in a good way. Like it's
Right.
OP for its level, but it doesn't scale
yeah.
linearly. It
But,
almost
like-
scales it like in reverse.
And we were talking the other day about like, hey, if you go back to a town where I was when I was level 2 and now I'm level 10, I want to feel like I'm level 10 in a level 2 town,
Right.
And so when that scales, like think about if it didn't scale, then the guard would be able to do 10 hit points and make it go away in 1 hit. But now that
Exactly.
I'm a higher level, it's a little bit more powerful. It don't have just 10 hit points anymore. It's got more than that, so you got to work
And
a
the
little
same
bit
guards
harder.
being the same level, those hit the same. But now that thing's a little bit more beefy
it's a
for
little
them.
beefy. And so that's kind of the mindset I was trying to go for on that front.
And yeah, I mean, when you're talking about, it's like what it's like every 3 levels you get a proficiency, or every.
I think so. It's roughly every 3 levels. I was
Yeah,
just looking at classes. Let me just look at go to monk
So,
for instance. And
I also like that because if
6. Yeah, you max out at 6.
max out at 6. So yeah, we're
and
talking
it's
about
every
30 hit points.
4 levels.
So what's great about this, the way that one of the things that I'm going to highlight that I immediately see about doing it this way is whatever the build is, you're adding a more dynamic growth. Because one of the things that I do have an issue with, and which is why I really like second editions, like proficiencies and how you level things up and how you learn things. At least the way that I've adopted second edition for High Point.
For sure.
But the idea that you are very structured in when and how you get things, what level you get them, it's always just been kind of a pain point when you really want to get like more into the role play development of your character, when you're doing it more of like what we talked about last time, or I think not last time, but one of my streams where I talked about how to, I think Cosmic had a question for me, and it was what would my suggestion be for new DMs on how to give out XP? And it was a great episode. I don't know if you caught that one. But XP for new DMs, I think is what the title was. And I basically went over what I thought were I think it was the same episode I did the introduction to lore in your setting.
Oh, okay.
It was that episode. I think I did a dual title because I started out with that question because I got it in Discord and I just really liked that question.
awesome.
Cosmic, I did see your question in Discord. I just haven't got to it yet. Good question, but I will get to that one. But yeah, so lost my train of thought there. What was I talking about?
We were talking about.
Oh yeah, the XP. So doing like benchmarking.
Yes.
So
the XP, that's right.
I was suggesting that for new DMs to do like benchmarking XP. So instead of giving XP out and trying to calculate it all the time, my initial idea was benchmark based on where you are in the campaign to just do level ups instead of worrying about the XP. And then if you're going to start dishing out XP, giving it out as party, and then maybe if you want to keep everybody equal, always give out party XP and just keep it at a rate that you're comfortable with. And then if you want to be more dynamic, I told them about mine, which is, party XP plus individual XP based on what they did. And, I don't like calculating it based off of individual kill and all of that. It's basically, what do I think the overall, reward should be for the party, the party XP for accomplishing everything, right? It's not about how many individual enemies you killed. It's the encounter. It doesn't matter if you killed all of them. That's the other thing I don't like about like kill XP. I didn't talk about this on that episode, Cosmic, but one thing I don't like about kill XP is that it requires you to kill it. If you found a much more innovative way to solve the puzzle, which is basically an encounter, is just a puzzle. If you found a more innovative way to solve it, why shouldn't you get equal or more XP? Why lower the XP because you scared the enemy and they ran away? That you must have been something. You've done something innovative or done something spectacular to scare them, right? If you've talked to them, that's diplomatically good XP. Like the idea is, I look at the situation that I'm giving them, assign those things XP, and then I give individual XP for bonuses and things that they do. And going with that allows for more dynamic leveling up, because not everyone's going to be the same level. They get their own proficiencies and when to use them and how to develop their character. And I give like free types of feats that are outside the norm because it helps develop the character, right? Both in and out of combat, like the kind of similar to the class roleplay features, but not specifically that, because but like you're parkouring with Daft, and then the improvement in parkouring, there's no feat or proficiency for that, but we allowed you to develop a bonus to whenever you wanted to parkour. You have a bonus to your roll and a better chance to do it because we developed a background feat, right, as something that we added to your character that's not really a identified thing. So I guess that's kind of a class roleplay feat that we've already been doing now, but not so much a guaranteed you take this class, you get it. That's more of an individual player one.
Exactly.
But
kind of like we were talking about with Venla.
But when that's why I like leveling it up, because it makes it more dynamic. The problem that you have with like 5e is the level up process feels like you're already, like, more times than not, it pushes you to pre-plan it. So you already know what you're going to do. You're just waiting to level up. So you're just trying to do things to get that next XP to do the thing. And you can only do it when you do those level ups, right? You just get it and then you move on. Whereas with this, you don't get anything at level 4 ever. It's level 3, level 5, maybe level 6, level 9, kind of maybe level 10, level 15, level 20. But like the big jumps, right? Like the big things you see when you read through a class build, it's like you get like a couple things up to level 5 and then you have to wait, right? This is one of those things where adding it every 4 levels with that proficiency modifier allows that person to build this as they go at more dynamic times and not waiting for those crucial level up moments. I know that was a very long-winded way to go all the way around that, but I had to make the point.
No, for sure.
But that's why I like that one. I wanted to point that out because having it offset from the standard leveling up process is just going to make that character's progression feel more exciting, right? Because when everyone goes from one gaming session to the next and it's level 3 to level 4, they're going to get something new that no one else gets. Everyone else gets the, proficiency modifier, but unless they have something that directly triggers off of that, they are going to be able to be like, I now have something new. I can now bring something new to the party that you guys won't be able to until another level or 2. And if you can sprinkle those in, various players, that's, I like that. I really wanted to highlight that because I like the idea that you're giving a wider dynamicism to the level up process.
Yeah, I was hoping it would kind of articulate and help it just feel like it's growing with you,
Ooh, okay. So I want to go through chat real quick because Cosmic, the last thing he says is directly related to this. So he does say more about his party coming up. There is one thing that since since we know the dragon is tracking them down, they had some time to make 3 more of the divination potions that he was customizing.
Yeah.
Using 3rd, 4th, and 6th level spell slots. That's spicy. Now we're getting spicy.
Okay.
So fun part with the divination potions is that at the time they rolled the D4 for the multiplier and got a 3. They rolled 3d6s for the spell levels. They legit rolled 666, but they only have one 6th level spell, so they had to re-roll for the other 2 to get the 3 and the 4. Honestly, if you had rolled 666, first off,
Satan would have come and helped you.
First off, in high point, that's one of those special numbers that it's rare enough that you have a chance to roll 666. Like, how often are you rolling 3 6s?
Mm-hmm.
I would have probably not only let you have 3 6-level spells, the other 2 may have been like a gift. Like, the idea is you make the 1 at 6th level that you can, and then 2 more 6th levels appear that you don't know what they are, but are beneficial. Like, I would have done that as a high point thing. But as the DM, my only critique from DM to DM, why the reroll? If they were 6 levels, if he rolled 3 6s, right, just to do 6th level spells, and he only had 1 6th level spell to use, but he had a 5th level spell, why not just let him have? You rolled the 6. Why not just let him have the next highest one? You know what I'm saying?
I mean, that's fair.
My only thing, I don't think you should have had a re-roll to choose as low as a 3rd level spell unless you wanted a 3rd. You rolled 3 6s, man. Mm-hmm. You should have just gotten your fucking pick of any goddamn spell on your spell list because you rolled the highest level spell you have 3 times. It's basically like no holds barred.
I
Go.
mean, that's kind of fire.
But that's just me. But that's fantastic. I'm glad that you got to actually max that out because that is awesome that you got to have the 6th level spell. But yeah, his question for you, so regarding this, right? This would upgrade with the proficiency modifier, correct?
Yes.
His question, what about items that buff the creature/player's character proficiency bonus? Like the Ion Stone of Mastery, would that also affect the Vine's HP?
The Ion Stone of Mastery. Interesting. I'm going to have
you want to save your 5th level slots for spells, plus the DM didn't know I rolled. Gotcha. Okay, I didn't realize that was a private roll, but good on you. Like I like the idea that you're playing the economy correctly for your spells. But yeah, so while you're looking that up, do you have an initial like?
So initially, I want to say no because I don't know of many things that actually affect your proficiency modifier, but
he says it's a legendary item that gives a +1 to the proficiency bonus. So he's basically just asking if you could.
Your proficiency bonus increases by 1 while this. That's crazy.
So in this case, and in any other case that it could happen, would you allow the Vine to?
I would 100% allow it. I would 100% allow it. This is a legendary item. This is meant to like make you way more powerful in a lot of different ways. Like, think about what your proficiency bonus actually affects. It affects every single one of your weapon attacks, every single one of your saving throw. Well, not every single one. Every saving throw you're proficient in, every skill set you're proficient in. Like, it affects so much. Why not let it affect? And now, granted, you're getting 5 more HP for this one thing. Right? Yeah. Like, that's all it is. It's just 5 more. No matter what level you are, you're just getting 5 of these. So I'm totally down for it.
So the max you could get, with this would be a 35. Like at a max level with this stove. Yeah, so perfect. Great question. No, fantastic. I was going to say
and spell save for casters. Yep, that's facts.
What's that?
I was just listing off the stuff that increases your proficiency bonus, and spell save for casters is also one of those things.
So I would say, and even for high point, I would 100% agree if you're basing it off of a proficiency, if you're a proficiency bonus, I would 100% say that I would expect that anything that modifies it obviously adjusts it,
for
right?
Sure.
Regardless of how easy it would be to do it. It's like saying, oh, this is based off your strength modifier, but if your strength ever changes, it's only ever based off of your starting strength, right? It sounds a little bit weird to be like, oh, it's only based off your starting number, not your modified number.
I think my mindset was more geared towards, okay, why is this increasing?
Right.
And so my heart is like, okay, well, if I'm increasing this, like, I wanted to scale it with like what I would consider like the power of the player.
Like what you were trying to, I think what your mind might have gone towards, because I think part of like my hesitation too was something akin to, you have XYZ based off your HP. Does temporary HP count? And it's like, well, no, because it's not your actual, because it's more based off your permanent HP count, not your temporary. And temporary is more like a shield.
And it's
not quite your permanent. So it's
definitely
it's
why
like
I wanted
in this
to hear
case,
the wording. Like, is the wording like, hey, I'm going to boost you while this happens?
Like,
if this happens,
for
to
instance, if for some dumb reason there was a like guidance could affect your like in the sense that
Yeah,
guidance
yeah.
can affect a roll. Could you temporarily give someone 3 proficiency bonus modifiers? Then all of a sudden your vine has 15 more health. Like
Yeah.
I can understand that being questionable, but if it truly is something that could actually affect you like that, I would say that it should change it. So I'm glad that you agree with that.
Yeah, for sure. Again, yeah, I know that you guys are right. Both you and Cosmic have mentioned that there are certain things that are just way overused in D&D, right? And dexterity saving throw is one of those things. Which is why I added in other options as well. But I think that if I am looking at my actual experience in real life, how many times do I experience actual dexterity saving throws? And is it way more often than I would experience any other type of saving throw? In my personal experience, it's heck yeah. Now maybe that's because I'm clumsy and I experience those things more often.
But I mean, because what I think this comes down to is if you, again, we like to add a sense. I use that word, a sense of reality in our settings. The idea is that like High Point has physics, but it's not physics as we know it to a T. It's very influenced off of what I know about physics and quantum physics and the hobbies that I like to look into, but I don't go to school for that, so it's not ideally based off of it. But the idea is that we like consistency. The idea of physics, when we talk about the manifestation of physics in our realm, we're talking about the consistency, the ability that if A equals B over here, if you go anywhere else at any other point in time in my game, unless otherwise stated for good reason, A is still going to lead to B.
Like gravity, you drop stuff.
Exactly.
It's going to have that consistency every time.
100%. Yeah.
But yeah, so that's one of the biggest reasons why I was like, okay, it still makes sense to do that here. So the way I have it worded is, when targeted, a creature must succeed a dexterity saving throw or become grappled, right? If a creature is dashing, they have advantage on the saving throw. So think about it. If you are moving at your top freaking speed, right?
I like the advantage.
Adding X, then you're going to have a little bit better chance to avoid...
I like the advantage. Yeah, no. I definitely like the advantage. I know what you mean by the dexterity saving throw. I totally get what you mean.
So, here's my alternative. I say, alternatively, a creature with a dexterity score of 13 or higher, and I put a little requirement because if you're going to see this thing coming at you, you're going to need to have some sort of dexterous skills to be able to react to this. But if you have a dexterity score of 13 or higher, they can use their reaction to make an attack at this. Now, regardless
so
of...
kind of like allowing an opportunity of attack almost.
Basically, yes. And so what can happen is, no matter how much damage they do on that attack, if they hit, it does not grapple them. Meaning, like we talked about last time, it's going to go flat and it's going to still spend its 2 turns dragging itself all the way back in, which the user of it can't recast it during that time. So no matter what, basically that hit, if I succeed on that hit of a DC of 10, the AC of 10, then I deflect it.
Right.
Now,
No,
if
I
I
totally
do
understand
enough
that.
damage to it to destroy it, then I can
So
destroy it.
So be it. Yeah.
Right? But if I don't, then it's just been deflected.
Interesting. Okay.
That's kind of the mindset. So it gives you another option other than just dexterity saving throw. Like maybe you're bad at dexterity, but you can
I do like the minimum to be able to use a reaction to do that. So I like all of that. I have alternatives if you're willing to hear them, but I like that. I don't think those are bad options. I think if you want to stick to 5e rule sets, and that's again, most of my approach would not, is outside of 5e. So from a 5e mindset, that's perfect. That works ideally working with a DC check, allowing for the if you're dashing through the zone, allowing for dexterity, for the advantage. Because again, it's a player using it, so it's the likelihood of an enemy dashing giving them dexterity. They either have to know about it or just be needing to move that distance. And most people don't dash. It's an underused, mechanic, unless you're really trying to
Or you're
cover distance. So yeah, no, I think that's good, and I think the fact that you can use a reaction to defend yourself, I like that too.
Yeah, so it's on their turn, so it doesn't use up on-turn action economy, because reaction is generally something you do not on your turn, but
Right.
in this situation you're dashing, which triggered somebody else. It's like when you counterspell a counterspell. It's a reaction to a reaction to a
Yeah.
reaction type deal. It's similar. It's like I can react to you reacting to me moving.
Yeah,
Just,
no, that's not bad.
So-
I like that for 5e that totally fits.
the only thought that literally just now came into my head is, should I allow someone that's dashing to try and deflect it? Because you're using all of your energy, effort, and everything to dash forward. That's what you're doing. You're giving up your action most of the time.
That's it right there. You just said it. If you're dashing, you have to use an action. You have to use your attack action. It has to be. You have to basically
So in 5e, that's standard.
Oh, no,
with
dash is the action.
With the exception of rogues, who can use it as a bonus action naturally. Monks, who can spend a key point to do it as a bonus action.
So that's it. That's your balance. It would require an action. So the only people that would be able to do it are dashing either by haste or by those who can bonus action dash. Because what that allows for is, think about it. Think about the rogue. Think about the monk. Those are people who can attack quickly when they're running. Think about the the ninja run where you pull out the sword. Not everybody. A soldier, a fighter in armor, sprinting across the battlefield is not going to react fast enough, sprinting at full speed with a shield and a sword, to swing at this fast-moving whip. But a rogue, a monk, quickly dashing across. I'm thinking like the Naruto run, with their daggers out, quickly dashing. This thing comes around and they just quickly move it, and it's just literally that. It's a deflect, because the monks can deflect missiles.
Yes.
So how treat it like that. If you're dashing, it requires an action to do this, and if you don't have an action economy for it, then you don't do it. But what it does is it opens the door for alternative ways to dash.
Interesting. No, I think.
So I 100% agree. Do that. Allow the reaction.
If they have the action economy.
Because I like the idea that you're playing with reaction on turn. And you can even call it a bonus action. If you really want to make it real, just call it a bonus action. Just say you have to use your bonus action to deflect instead. Or if you don't want to, you can still take the DC check.
Right, very much so.
And whatever. So I would say that that's not bad. I would say I keep it like that, where if you're just running through the area or moving at normal speed, if you're not dashing, totally be able to use a bonus action / reaction to attack it. If you're dashing, it takes an action, because it takes either premeditated forethought to this is happening, or it takes the required reflexes.
Right.
And a soldier in armor, a paladin, someone on a horse, actually, someone on a horse would be interesting, because they're not the one dashing.
That's actually very.
So we're talking about, but you know what I'm saying is, those that are in the mode to literally be dashing, there's only a few mindsets that you can imagine would have the reflexes and even the physical ability because of the armor or weapon or whatever. And you can even say, this would be more of a high point judgment, but if you have a rogue wielding a long sword or a great sword, maybe he can't. You could even do it. Maybe it not only takes an action, but maybe it also takes a one-handed weapon or a versatile,
or a light weapon or finesse weapon.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Even just finesse.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying? I like the idea of being able to deflect it even at a dash, but not everybody should be able to do it.
Yeah.
I 100% agree. Not everyone should be able to do it.
I also feel like it should be. I didn't articulate this, but I also feel like it should be a melee attack.
100%. No. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think you should. Well.
Maybe a rogue or a monk could throw a dagger or a ninja star at it, but would that? I don't know. I'm trying to decide whether that should be enough to throw it off course, or you'd need to actually put some oomph behind the deflection to get that thing to actually maybe if you had a hefty boomerang or something like that.
Well, if you're really thinking about it, regardless of how it's coming at you, whether it's by momentum or magic or intent, like intelligence, any damage is going to recoil. So that's the idea. It's
Yeah.
supposed to be, even if it's withering up to you, it's supposed to be fast, and you're moving
Yeah.
out of the way. Any damage, anything to make it jerk,
Message.
it's not like
trajectory.
it's gonna just plow through an arrow, right? It's a living thing. If it gets hit, even if it gets deflected, it's still gonna recoil in some
gonna
way.
have-
So I would say if you're gonna allow for that, either do it based on action, action economy, and then again, it still narrows it into the people that can, or weapon type, maybe, finesse, thrown, and hand crossbows. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And again, that's where you have like a soldier, maybe, or like a fighter in full armor. Maybe if they have a hand crossbow. Like if you don't use the action,
Yeah.
that's how a fighter could do it, because if they have a hand crossbow, they're more likely to be able to do that than they are to do a full hand swing, right?
Yeah.
They're running, doing that is probably more in line with what you think they could do, like, in the heat of the moment, like, oh, I got to shoot like to my
Right.
side. Whereas, again, if you're doing it by the action, you're thinking more of who has the reflexes. So however you want to, approach that. But
Okay.
I say do it. I say keep that and don't open it up to everybody. Because during the
Right.
dash,
I definitely liked that added piece in there for almost exactly what you said too. At the end, the last line was, regardless of the damage, if the attack is a hit, the grapple fails. But then once grappled, a creature can respond to the vines in one of three ways on their turn.
let's pause there real quick.
Yes.
We have a couple things from chat. So
Yes.
Cosmic says he wishes there was more of a custom feat that would allow 2 or more casters to combine their spells for specialty effects. Like one of the casting
Yes.
Fireball, the other
Yes.
casting Sickening Radiance. They could be combined if the requirements are met. I actually believe there is something in 2nd edition for that. Not only is there a way that casters, there is a ritual, there's an old school ritual from, I think, Forgotten Realms that allowed casters to connect. So there was a ritual where multiple casters could essentially get together and simultaneously cast together. So basically just like overcharge a spell.
Interesting.
Which is may or may not be some of the ways that crystal spheres were originally created, but that's left for speculation. But I do believe there was in one of the modules. I do believe that there was actually, it wasn't a feat. I don't know if it was a feat or if it was like a subclass, but there was a way where you could basically they were trying to play with this. The problem was is how do you I think they even had a table of certain things that certain ones could create. The problem is I think it was just expansion. How do you keep on making all of the different combinations? So I don't think it went very far, but I do want to say I've read something like that.
Interesting. I have some thoughts on how you would combine stuff like that.
I
'Cause
100% do it in High Point. 100% you can do that in High Point. Magic can connect and
specifically
interfere
with
with itself.
with 5th edition spells and the way they're laid out. I think with certain caveats, with certain rule structures, if there's 2 ranged spells, imagine if you're just thinking no matter what the spell is for the most part. And again, you can flavor the combination however you want to say what exactly is happening, and again you use your idea of what you want to do to make it make sense. But essentially, mechanically, what you could do is be like, hey, I have these 2 spells. I can choose the range of one, but you have to have an even spread between both spells, right? You can choose the range of one or the range of the other. You can choose the area of effect of one or the area
So you
of
pick
effect
and
of
choose the
Yes.
aspects of each spell.
And a lot of the time, spells will have a damage effect, especially higher level spells. A lot of times they'll have a damage effect and a side effect.
Bro.
If you can choose the damage effect from one, the damage dice from one, and then the actual spell effect from the other, and just kind of mix and match and do different things in that way.
You just gave me a great idea. This would work best in Discord with a bot.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I would love to put that
But dude,
together.
imagine this is how you do wild magic. Based on roll tables, you roll for range,
Bro, that's
effect,
that's the kind
damage,
of wild magic class I wanted to create.
But imagine it's range 30 feet. You roll 30 feet. Damage lightning. Effect, fireball. So your spell is that you form a fireball, you throw it at the enemy, and as it strikes them, fire leaps from each enemy like lightning. And like just the idea that like you could do wild magic like that, like the way that you were just saying that, I'm just imagining wild magic. It would be better if you would just have a bot do all of the rolls and then pump out the custom spell.
This is the effect that occurs.
But then I just thought of, okay, so imagine this. So imagine you want to make a brand new type of spellcaster. You want to use wild magic, but you don't want it to be random every time. So what you do is every time you cast a spell, you roll a d4. That's the level. Then you roll all of the aspects. Once you've done it, that's now your permanent spell. That's just a spell in your spell book.
Interesting.
That's how you make the class. Every time they level up and get a new spell, they fucking roll for it. So you just literally roll out, and those are your permanent spells, whatever they are, however good or bad they are.
It would almost be like your wild magic in the sense like you're so chaotic you don't even know what, like, you have to use the magic that you're given. You don't know what it's going to be. You don't know what it's going to turn into or how it's going to develop.
Well, but I like to think of it as, instead of it being wild magic as in the effect is random, it's wild magic as in you randomly brought in and formed magic and you didn't know what you were doing and you made a spell.
But that's the thing is...
But it's like nothing that ever existed.
You had no idea what that spell was going to do before you cast it the first time.
But now you can recreate that movement over and over. So just like any other
you
wizard,
can do that one thing again, but again, you didn't get to pick what that one thing was. So now you have to work with that one thing that you now know.
Exactly.
And then you have to make...
Bro, I want this.
Work.
I so fucking want to do this.
I could do both...
Dude, we're gonna work on this. We're gonna fucking work on this. No, this is such a good idea. So a wild magic class, where the very first time they ever cast magic, you roll, and that's their first spell. And so like let's say level 1 they get 2 spells, right? So whenever they say, okay, I'm gonna cast my spell number 2, you roll, and then whenever they level up, I'm like, okay, now you get a level 2 spell. They're like, okay, well I'm gonna hold off, and then the first time they cast it, you go to the level 2, and then you literally make a roll table out of all the level 2 spell stuff, right? Because you can make it as easy as literally list out all the level 2 spells, and they just roll dice on that, and whatever level 2 spell they roll, you take the attribute from that one. So you just say, hey, roll your range, roll your damage, roll this, roll that, roll special, whatever you want to put it together for, and you're just basically using whatever the spell list of whatever spells they have, or whatever level that they're getting. But then that's it. That's just because can you imagine how either just strictly OP or just downright booty that would be?
It could be okay, but here's the thing. That's what I like about it is because it's only terrible if you view it as terrible.
Oh yeah, if you know how to role play with it, or if you know how to use it out of the box, it's never terrible.
Imagine that's what your character is. It's like you have nothing. You are this like bum, and you're like a sorcerer. Well, again, so the 5th edition version of a sorcerer, which is basically like someone who just has natural magic.
Yeah.
Who, like this is you just discovered that you have this ability, and
you have no control.
You don't know what it is. You don't know how to use it, which is why that would be an awesome feature in the beginning. In your first like 5 levels, you have practically 0 control, but as you level up you might get to control one aspect of the spell or maybe another aspect of a spell, and then finally when you become you can now craft every aspect of a brand like that's
here's that
would be crazy.
Here it is, right? So you break down however many attributes there are to it, like the average spell, right? Like there's like usually like 6 or whatever, but you break out whatever attributes, however many you are. It'd be great if you can go to 9, because what you do is starting at level 1, you roll all attributes, and then every time you level up, or every time you get a new spell level, you get to choose one more attribute, right? One at a time, until you're dealing with 9th level spells, and then at 9th level, you literally get to look at all 9th level spells and go, I want that range, I want that, and you get to craft your own 9th level. Bro, so imagine wanting to play that character, but imagine the shitstorm campaign that would follow in your wake. Imagine when people started realizing what you are and what you're leading to. like in High Point, you would be like. You'd be hard pressed to live. High Point would try to TPK that party because.
But here's the thing,
fuck that guy.
What if their whole thing was like they know, like they are this anomaly, they're this entity that nobody shouldn't exist. It's not supposed to, and so their whole job is to keep what they are.
I know that's what it would be. And if someone does this in High Point,
Bro.
they will probably be the only one until I figure out 100% if this is like a thing. But right now this doesn't exist in High Point as a mass thing. This might just be kind of like how Warlock the High Point Warlock is supposed to be very like
NPC lightweight.
Not supposed to be NPC, but it's supposed to be very rare. It's not supposed to be something that just everyone does, and there's not supposed to be big followings of it. It's supposed to be kind of taboo. It's supposed to be something that most people just wouldn't even dare or can't even fathom spending, several lifetimes doing. So it's kind of like that, where it's like, this is almost one of those things where it's like, I don't want a ton of these. This would be one of those, again, because leading up to 9th level, this would be just lightweight, one of those sleeper cell like agent types that you just never want to call out.
In public, they only ever do prestidigitation.
Oh, I wanted to bring that up. Can you imagine applying the same thing to cantrips?
Same.
So let's say they get 3 cantrips. So you get to roll against all. Think about how many fucking cantrips there are. And if we play this correctly, let them have all spells. Roll table from all
spell lists.
All spell lists. So can you imagine all cantrips and they just randomly throw one together? Dude, can you imagine just there are so many crazy cantrip combos.
I will say there will have to be, especially with 5th edition, there will likely have to be some at the very least at early levels limitations, because we can't, like, imagine if you got a spell that gave you range on something that you shouldn't have that much range on.
That's the point.
They gave you stupid range. Like,
dude, you know what we should do? We should totally set something up with your kids next time you do you don't want to do like a main gaming session. We should set this up to where we run a gaming session with your kids and all of them are this. We come up with like a scenario to run them through in your world. But we should do that. Just literally let them all be magic users. But the first time they try to use like however much magic they have. So again, like maybe we make them level 10, so they have a good spell list. So it's like, hey, you all have 4 level 1 spells, 2 level 2 spell, however many. They're like, what spells do we have? And they're like, you don't know.
Your spell books are.
And you literally have them listed: spell 1, spell 2, spell 3. And you're like, so I cast spell. It's like, which one? A first level spell. Which one? 1, 2, or 3? I cast this one. Roll for it. And then you just have them do all the rolls, like, this is your spell. So just play the game, and then they're just like, guys, we're almost losing. I have a level 7 spell I haven't tried yet.
It could save our lives!
You know what I'm saying? Just like, let's go! Let's fucking do it, boys!
That would be actually a sick one-shot idea. Just give, like, a group of magic users blank, empty spell books and have them, like, run around, like, trying to figure out what their spells are, and then, like, once they know what their spell is, like, use it to, like, help. That would be kind of sick.
Or what you could do, you only have, like, one person in the party have the roll one where they have to roll all the aspects of it. But maybe someone else, you'd have them roll, but not all the aspects, but you have them roll for a spell, like on a spell table. And then you start giving them spells. And then you have this person roll for a different spell table. This person roll for a different spell table. So this person is the wild magic class that we just created, right? So they're just getting any spell randomly. They're the wild card of the group, which would be fun. This person finally learns, bro, I'm only getting priest spells. I must be a cleric. Bro, I'm only getting these kind of spells. So we customize each class so they don't know what kind of magic user they are, but you just slip them non-descriptive spells at first. Like one could have, hand, like you can give 2 of them different healings, but you slowly just feed them only, like you feed this one, they roll, but they only get cleric spells. They only, so eventually they have to catch on, and maybe it's the first spell they get. They're like, oh, I must be a cleric. It's purify food and water.
Yeah.
Like, but the point being is like every single one's a different magic user. So that way you're not really rolling so many spells, but like, I want to test this out.
I like this a
to...
lot. I really do like this idea.
And then Cosmic had an add-on too earlier. The reason why I paused you is he had an add-on about dashing. He wanted to add in. So speaking of dashing, he wishes that there was a feat for monks due to them getting extra movement as they level up. I mean, the ones that break the speed, sound barrier,
no doubt.
Can run around. So he wants a feat for monks that can run around a single enemy to distract them, causing the next attack on a creature to be made with advantage. Oh, on that creature to be made with advantage, but at risk of hitting the dasher due to getting in the way. So basically, he wants to say, can you use your dash to never break out of the enemy's area? So you
want to
never
be the
provoke.
Flash. You want to tornado around somebody on your turn, lightweight.
So there are feats that I forget which feat it's called, but there is a feat that basically allows you to target an enemy, and if you're within 5 feet of it, and if it attacks anybody but you, it has disadvantage. And I think there's another one a separate one where you can take their attention and everybody gets advantage on them. So I think there's already feats like that, but I like this idea that you're dancing features, around them.
But I actually have a way that I think could work for that. Specifically for monks, basically it would take a certain amount of your movement, either like half your movement or like maybe 40. You have to have at least 40 feet of movement to use this feature or something like that. But you forego the rest of your movement. Instead of using any action economy, you just use your movement speed. And that movement speed, so you can leave the character physically in the same place. So
basically, what you have to do is you have to use your dash to get as much. So the idea would be you have to have enough movement to circle the enemy 3 times. So you would have to use your dash, maybe your action to dash again. You'd max out all of your movement,
depending on what level monk you are,
and guarantee how big he is. Because if he's medium, it takes 4 squares.
That's actually interesting.
So that's what I'm saying is it depending on the size of the enemy. So anybody maybe could do like any normal character might be able to do this maneuver on a single target
on a regular.
Anything medium like large size that's 4 square like 2x2, maybe only a monk can get around him that much, but. If you max out the dash, you're also basically taking away their attack already. So instead of saying don't attack, you basically force use the attack by requiring them to dash and using any other movement boosts that require a 3 times around the enemy in order to accomplish it. And then, I would totally allow that because you basically could call it a no-hands grapple or a hands-off grapple. Because essentially what you're doing is imagine that in a real fight. You're doing this, they're facing them, and you're moving this way, and you're not attacking, but you're providing them something to defend against, so they're going to constantly be at you. So I would say that this is how I would do it. I would only allow it this way to bypass the feats that already exist to accomplish basically taking an enemy's attention. I would just implement this as a rule that if you can circle them 3 times, you can do this.
Oh, like no matter what class you are,
just
like anybody. Like
because if you make the rule broad enough, it really does limit it to how many people can dash around an enemy 3 times. So think about it, even a 1 enemy, right? So if you think about you start at the corner, 1 enemy takes up 1 square, so you still have to travel 2, 4, 6, 8 in 1 turn in 1 pass. 8 is that? Yeah, it should be 8 squares, right? No.
So technically, if you're allowing diagonals, you only have to do 1, 2, 3, 4 to go back to your original.
Okay,
spot.
but and then the average character has 6.
Correct.
So a dash has 12.
Yes.
So that would be your 3.
Yeah.
That would be around, and that would take most of your movements. Mm-hmm. Most everybody would take all of your movements.
If you're a rogue, you can do that as your bonus action.
Right.
If you're a monk, you can do it as your bonus action at the cost of a key point. And other than that, I don't think any other class.
So, and again, and then maybe you want to use haste. So I think with that simple addition right there, why make it a feat to lock it into monk, saying a monk can use a feat to do this and take up an opportunity to level up, right? You're leveling up to take that feat.
Feats generally can be grabbed by any class.
Well, but what I'm saying is why take up the economy of using a feat during a level up when you can implement so what I'm saying is more as a DM point of view, instead of requiring a feat slot to be used up for this, I'd much rather implement a rule that does the same thing but they don't have to learn it. It's just a technique that does make sense for rogues to do too.
I mean,
kind of like what we talked
flanking.
about.
Flanking's the same way.
Yeah, and similar to what we talked about with the run, like with between rogues and monks being able to dash and attack at the same time.
Yeah.
If you make the rules, the generalized rules make more sense that it only affects those classes. Then in the rare occasions you could push another class to do it, then so be it. Like you made all the rules. If you can do all of these things, we talked about, like the monk and the rogue were the fastest ones to like be able to react to it. But hey, let's say my character's hasted. Fine, cool. That's justification, right? There's no reason why you shouldn't be able to. I'm just saying that we didn't want that would be
or somebody has to spell Longstrider or something like that. That would give it.
So I agree with him. I think it is a good concept of a feat. I think there are other feats that exist, not necessarily monk specific, but I think there are feats that exist that already serve that purpose. But I think I might just do that. I think I might just, if it ever comes up, someone says, can I actually distract an enemy, but I don't have a specific action, I could say, hey, if you can do this, go ahead. Because you're basically causing them to be on the lookout for you the entire time.
Would you say that it's fair that if that enemy then attempted to run away from that place while they're being encircled like that, that the person encircling them might have advantage on an attack of opportunity for them while they're trying to run away?
I don't think that they'd get any more advantage on the opportunity than I think it's the same thing. They'd still get regular opportunity attack, right? Okay. I think, though, that the vision, however, should be that you're not dashing on your turn and spinning around them. I envision it more as I'm going to take my action to dash, or use my actions to dash. Essentially, I'm building up my movement, but essentially on my turn, I will pass over them, and then I'm going to delay my action. And my trigger is that every turn I'm going to circle them. So the idea is, in order to keep the concept that you're continuing to distract him, I would almost say that you're kind of like how you can, have like a contingency. You can say, like, I'm going to reserve my attack if this happens.
Your held action.
Almost like maybe you're doing that. You're using all of your movement throughout the round. So maybe you are moving.
I kind of look at it like all the turns are happening at the same time anyways.
Yeah.
So, like, while they're doing whatever it is they're doing, I'm running around them.
But that's what I'm saying is, like, if you describe it this way of saying that it's happening across the entire turn instead of saying I run around and then stop, if you kind of even allow every person's initiative, you move him around, then it goes back into Cosmic's point of there's a chance to hit him. So I would say if you do that, if you say every round, every initiative, you're going to be in a new spot, whoever attacks them from that direction, they're the ones who might have a chance to hit you. But if you're on the backside of that turn and someone's hitting from over here, they have no chance to hit you.
I get that. I see some people complaining about, hey, there's 10 enemies in combat, so I moved 10 times this round, but where I would have only moved 2 times the other round when there's only 2 other people in combat, So if it's every initiative order, the number of people in the initiative order will determine how often that person moves around.
It wouldn't necessarily be the initiative order. It would be it would be hard to calculate, I guess, because it's more of by the end of your next turn. I do get what you mean. You're trying
to space it out. I'm doing it more like.
But no, you're right. Like logistically, it doesn't work to do that. But I guess it's more of a narrative aspect if you would be very much so throughout the round.
And I think I do agree that that's what would make most sense, especially in a situation like this.
But yeah, as a DM, I would like to call that as just, it doesn't need a feat. I think that is a interaction. I think that's an action that you should be able to perform, and I think it's creative. You know what I mean? It's not just saying, hey, instead of attacking this guy, I just want to take his attention all game. Like, you could probably do that too. I would probably allow that. Like, I don't want to attack him, but I basically want to like feign attack him the rest of the round, so he just focuses on me. And again, we have feats for that for fighters and stuff, but I think this is a creative solution to use your action economy to get a desired result. And I would just allow it as is.
I like it.
He says the wild magic subclass should be named Placebo Caster.
Of course.
And then spells are only as good as you think they are. That's also very true. He says the thing about monk is, what if they multi-class into rogue just to get access to dash as a bonus action?
So basically, when you're a monk, you can use dash as a bonus action only if you expend a key point, but that's some significant action.
But if you,
That's
get rogue,
resources that you want to hold on to.
again, that's just playing the. Again, that's why it works to put it in the rules and not a feat, because how you build into it
Right.
is the point. Like, you make it to where you have to build into it that not everyone just gets it by byproduct, right?
Right.
So I 100% agree. If you get a monk to do that, then you're basically just stacking. You're doing exactly what people do with monk. And, you know, like how do you get the light speed monk, right? The way you get that is you just fucking stack as many...
All the fucking bonuses you can fucking get.
Yeah, all the bonuses to movement, and suddenly, you know, you're basically across the planet in a turn.
In a second.
So yeah, I think that's good.
And
then they'd save the monk's main action and the key point, not having to use the step of the wind every time they want to dash in that way.
that's just what we were talking about.
Yeah. So I think that works. And, you know, coming back to your thing too, regardless of the specific situations, I do like, again, I like that it pulls twice. I like that it has more distance. I like that you're thinking about people dashing through it.
So the part that I'm interested in is once you're grappled. Once you're grappled, you have 3 ways to interact with the vine. And so you have, and each different way takes a different element of action economy based upon what it does. So the first element you can do is damage. You can just straight up attack the vine. Now, this takes up action economy, but it specifically takes up an attack action.
Yeah.
So what that means is there are certain actions that take up for a fighter. Fighters get multi-attack, which means you get 2 attack actions. But the rest of your actions are just 1 action. So if I wanted to dodge, that would take my entire action. I don't get 2 dodges.
Correct.
Right? Same thing with everything else. It's only attacks that I can do multiple of in this round. So specifically, shoving can be done as an alternative to the attack action. Additionally, grappling, when you're doing it person to person, can be done as an alternative to the attack action. So if I have multi-attack, I can grapple 1 and then melee 2. Right? So you can combo those types of things. And this is another aspect. So basically, it's just doing an attack, but I can specifically target this item.
Yeah, of course.
And then, again, it works the same way. If I hit it, I have to do enough damage to it to destroy it in order to be released from the grapple. Right?
Oh, really?
Yes. But, so, again, it's only 10 hit points. So, it's meant to be 1 or 2 hits, right? To be able to destroy this thing. But, because of the action economy that it takes, the other ways that you can interact with it, it will affect those other ways you can interact with it. So, damage is it's an attack action, and you need to make an attack roll to use it, to do whatever you're doing with it. The second is escape. This also takes an action, but it's an athletics check. But that takes your whole action. You can't replace it. So, and that's again normal when you're trying to escape a grapple. You can't replace it with one of your attack actions. So
for the weaker of the party who may only have a dagger and can only do a D4, this might be a better option to get out than to try to just sit there and hack at it.
Or the opposite. Maybe you're not very athletic, but you're going to be able to do high damage.
Right.
So it'll be way easier for you to attack it.
Okay,
right?
so you're just giving an alternative to an attack. So you have a way to basically like just get out of it.
And the third way you can do it is to resist. And this is something that I wanted to add in there specifically because of what you brought in. You were talking about specifically the pull effect, right? And so basically what happens is you can, in this last one, the resist, it takes a bonus action. So if you don't want to use your entire action economy to mess with this thing, but you also don't want it to pull you, you can just use your bonus action to basically lock yourself in place to try and that is also an athletics check, right? So basically what happens is if you attack it, because you can do that with your attack action, and say if you don't get all the way out of it, you get advantage on your resist check for it to not pull you, right? So it's not going to be nearly as strong, right? So the way I'm looking at it is it's like, imagine you're hacking at a root, right?
Yeah, I got you.
And you didn't get all the way through. Like, it still got a hold of you. It's not as strong. It's not going to be as easy for it to just pull you in. But the way that the vine works is, if at the end of your turn you are still grappled, you are pulled 10 feet. So you have your entire turn.
Yeah, I
you
think
have your
that's
entire
the
turn
problem.
to do anything to it. You can try and resist it during your turn. You can try and escape from it during your turn. You can try and damage it and destroy it during your turn.
Gotcha.
But if you're still attached to it, if you haven't escaped by the end of your turn, and you even have the opportunity to do this the second you get grappled.
Yeah.
Say you're running past it and you fail your saving throw and you get grappled, but I still have my action. I chop it, I release it, and then I can do whatever it is that I got to do. You know, but that's the way that I'm looking at interacting with it, because it gives the person options like, hey, if I don't want to just what do you call it? I don't want to just use my entire action to try and escape this thing, right?
Right.
I would like another way to, at the very least, resist the effects of it, right?
No, I got you.
And so it'll be a little bit more costly to fully escape it, like right out of there. But there are other ways to do it. So
Yeah.
that's the thought process going down those three different ways to interact with it.
Okay. If you're looking to pull them at the end of the turn, then what you're going for works. I think it's a little complicated, all for one turn. I would break it out differently for high point. But for what you're trying to achieve, it does work. You're giving all of the right options that I think you should be giving, and you're giving the player the agency of the situation to decide the outcome essentially before the end of their turn, which that all works. Can't really, I just wouldn't put it together that particular way. I would break out the actions. I wouldn't give them 3 every time on their turn. What I would do is give the vine its own turn, put it in initiative. On its turn, it pulls. So that's a whole interaction of its own. Does not require the player to use anything to resist. I would give the resist option on the vine's turn. So the vine attacks it on its turn and grapples you. The vine's next turn, it's going to pull you. That's when you get a chance to resist, is where I would put that resist. I'd make it a strength check, because it makes more sense that you're just holding your ground and not being pulled forward. And it just gives a little bit more dynamicism, I think, because the way that
a lot of people say strength check, but to me, an athletics check is a strength check.
But at the same time as well, doing it on that, it also by breaking out that initiative, right? It goes more in line with when it got grappled and when it will be pulled, doing the strength check to just basically resist it. Either they can be pulled and they don't have to resist it, but I think it makes more sense to be pulled on the vine's turn. And then on their turn, I think you had it perfect where they can choose to escape and not attack if they can attack, or attack, but knowing they have to kill it or they'll keep getting pulled on its turn. And to me, I think that just from a DM point of view running the encounter, I think it would work more cleanly for me to every time it's the vine's turn. Okay, vines, guys, because let's say you get to a point where you can do more than one, right? Or just in general enemies. Because I think it from the point of view of just organization of the combat. Having the vine have its own turn, okay, what is it doing? It's pulling. The vine's going to pull. There's a resistance option. And remember, you're giving this to your player too. So it's more like, what are they going to use it for?
And my only issue with that is I've had a lot of issues, especially when I'm trying to run combat, where especially when you get to higher levels, there are a lot of other things that add things to the combat tracker.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And the more you add to the combat tracker, to me, that bogs down like what I have to pay attention to, what I have to remember. I totally skipped the vine's turn this round.
Well, and that's why you can also add the like sometimes when they add the accessory to the turn of the caster, so you could just have the caster and the vine go on the same initiative.
And that they do that sometimes too. But again, it's still another process. But the way I look at it is, imagine if I'm treating this like a spell effect, right? Imagine I'm treating this vine like, at the end of your turn, if something happens to you when you get stunned or something like that. Like, or when you're done with haste at the end of your turn, you get stunned.
Yeah.
Like the mindset for me is just, hey, at the end of your turn, this is the spell effects that you have on you, and it. To me, if especially just because when you have different things you put on your players, a lot of the times your players, they're responsible for remembering, what's on them. Or
and also keep in mind too. So two things, I guess. I guess the mindset to coming at this. If I'm coming at this from the point of view of I'm using this against my players, like NPC is using this against the players, I feel like I'm giving them too much choice at that point. Because again, it's like, do you want to attack it? Do you want to try to wrestle out? Or do you just want to stay in place and then do a whole bunch of other stuff and then it's going to still pull you? Like, it sounds like that might be almost too much to throw on a player, but let's reverse that. It's going to be the players using this. So remember, every time the player uses this and grapples an enemy, I guess what I'm kind of coming down with,
I do see what you're saying.
If I were using this against my players, because to me this would exist in a high point, I would prefer to give the initiative. I would prefer to give a separate initiative for the pool and allow the player to decide whether to attack or escape, and just do that. Because again, it's nothing else is going to happen. They're not going to move on their turn. It's So again,
the only thing that's occurring on the Vine's turn is just the pulling
and the attack and the pull. Right, the first is the attack, then there's the pull, and that also fucks up combat because especially in high point, initiative is rerolled every single round.
That's
so
true.
Imagine the disruption of combat when you're like, oh, next round I'm going to get you. Oh fuck, it's going to pull me this round before my turn. Now you have to hopefully fight it, otherwise it pulls you away from the enemy you were about to attack, pulls you closer to an enemy. Because so from a DM point of view, using it, I feel like there's too many choices for the player, and B, it feels like it's better organized for me, but you're giving it to the player. So let's talk about that. The player uses it. You're the one who has to make all these choices, which means you're not overcomplicating it for the player, which is already a bonus, right? Because they don't have to make these choices. You're the one who has to keep track of, these are the 3 things I can do. So then you just have to look at it from that point of view of, if I'm running an encounter and my player throws us out and one of the guys gets hit, are you going to really care that you have 3 options? And beyond, you just be honest with yourself as a DM, are you just always going to attack it? Is it just more likely that it makes most sense to just get it off the battlefield? Or do these other options for you make sense to use? Because that's really what it comes down to.
And to be honest,
who's using the spell, right?
And for me, the mindset would be the same if I were a player. It's like, I want to know, like, for the most part, if it's just regular ass enemies, it's probably going to be a generic choice, depending upon what it is, right?
They're more likely to freak out and attack the thing.
If it's a really dumb animal, they might ignore the vine and they might just try and like bite at you the whole time and get pulled. Fair. If it's like a goblin or something, the vine might freak them out, so they might always attack it no matter what.
Right. So that's what I'm getting at is since you're technically in the context of what we're talking about, you're going to be the one dealing with these specific 3 choices. So my critique is, if you're giving this out to players, it does still make sense for the DM to take the brunt of this. But the other way around, if me as a DM were to use this against them, that's when I would want to change it for me. Because for me, it makes more sense to split it up a little bit.
My mindset when creating all of the stuff, so like me creating this, when I eventually create my samurai class, when I do all of that stuff, like, I want to create it so that anybody could use it, like, so I could like put it up and other people, other DMs, anybody could like take it and use it, I want it to feel like it was something that you could have just taken out of like the player's handbook or whatever. So like I wanted to feel balanced enough, to feel like a part enough of the world that people can take it and make it their own, right? Like that's my ultimate, like, I would want it to feel synergistic enough for anybody who comes to it, and like, again, not too cumbersome, not too challenging to play, because you sitting here spending half the time like sitting here trying to calculate what you can even do. Like, you're not really enjoying it at the end of the day.
And that's why I bring up is giving the players these 3 options, knowing they're going to get pulled at the end of it, is that better than just saying, do you want to attack it or try to escape? Like, do you think you could do enough damage? Do you care? Because really what it comes down to is when you get grappled by it, right? What it comes down to is prioritization of position. Is because I'm assuming that it's going to do something when they finally get to the center. I'm sure that's where it does extra damage, because it should do something. It should do some extra damage, or maybe it starts to grapple them more. Like once the next turn, once it's in the center, maybe it goes for like restricted.
There might be an upgrade later that does that, but right now the main goal is to just get them in the area, to make the area more useful and make it so that people aren't just running around it.
And so with that, you have to think, when utilizing this, when someone's grappled, it's all about priority of position. If they don't care, if they're a ranged person, they're not going to care they're getting pulled. They probably won't even fight back. They'll just attack anyone else and then just let the pull happen.
Unless there's a bunch of melee fighters in there that could get them.
Totally situational. But, that's where, if you're going to get pulled, is there really ever a reason to resist? Like think about the idea that I
have scenarios in my mind where that makes sense, which is why I put it there.
Which is fair. But scenarios are the exception, not always the rule, right?
That's why I think any of the options are there. There are scenarios where you'd want to damage it. There are scenarios where you'd want to escape from it.
And that's what I'm saying, is adding all of those options and kind of like, because you were making the point too, is there's already a lot to calculate,
which is fair.
So all I'm saying is the balance of all of those options on the player, is that, do you feel balanced enough for the potentials that you're trying to cover, or would it be easier to just basically, do you even care about escaping and attacking it right now? Like, do you want to try to get out? Do you want to attack it, or are you not caring? Versus, do you want to escape? Do you want to attack it? Do you want to fight back?
For me, the reason why it balances out, because again, I would want to have all of those options if I was being attacked by this. I would want to have all of those options. I wouldn't want to be like, hey, either you have to spend your entire action to escape from this thing, hope you do enough damage to make it go away, or it's going to pull you. Because say I'm in melee with somebody who's really important and I want to stay in melee with them, and if they pull me at the end of my turn, it's going to mess up everything else.
And I 100% agree, but that's why for me it makes more sense to put the pull on just as something else. Like don't add the pull as at the end of your turn. This is all. I think it's adding too much complexity, because by telling them the pull is going to happen at the end of your turn, I think is where the complexity.
Do you think the
of
complexity,
the choice,
it being on one person's turn, makes a significant difference when it's put on its own turn? Like,
yes.
What's the biggest advantage you see to that?
Because when it comes to, it depends on how you do initiative. Obviously with mine it rotates, so it already makes a more dynamic combat, but putting the onus on the player, they know it's going to try to pull them at the end of their turn. It's putting so much more effort on what's going to happen on that turn, whereas if it happens on a different turn, especially if it's rotating, they can make different plans. Like you were saying, I don't want to leave this spot on this turn, but if the plan's already tried, if it was already the vine's turn, that's not a worry now. I'm not going to be moved the rest of this turn, so I'm going to be right where I want. But the idea for me is that adding the extra bit of planning of, I have this extra option because it's going to happen right here and now, versus, well, yeah, it's going to pull me regardless on another turn. I just think it focuses in on what can I control right here, right now. And the pull is going to happen, right? The pull is always going to happen, but trying to put all of these other actions on top of, but you could resist it. It's like, but if I'm in, okay, so here's a better way to put it. If I'm in a position to attack someone, right? And this is the position I want to be in. Am I going to attack them because I'm in the position I want to be in? Or am I going to resist the pull because I want to be in this position to attack them next turn? Right? Like, the pull technically doesn't matter when it happens, but I personally think it's just adding too much. Like, as a player, I just think it would be adding an extra layer, whereas that layer should just be there regardless of me, right? It's going to happen. I'm going to resist it. They're going to try to pull. I think it should be a guaranteed resist, right? It's going to pull you. You're going to resist. Maybe that's what I'm trying to get at, and I haven't found the words for it.
I see what you're saying.
Making it a decision, making them have to choose to resist it and cost an action, I think is my problem. I think the pull, and that's why I say it should go on the Vines initiative, but that doesn't matter. I think the pull is going to happen regardless. I think the pull is a save regardless. I think making it a reaction or a choice, I think, is why it sounds too complicated to me.
So the way
It takes me like 15 minutes to get to that point.
But like I get what you're saying, and I understand why we need to like work through
that's
it, like
it right there.
articulate
That
it, but-
specific thing
so
right there
if
is
I'm
why I have a
envisioning
problem.
what's
with it.
actually happening here. Here's what I'm actually envisioning. All right, we're out on the battlefield. Screw like mechanics and any of that stuff. We are out physically on the battlefield. Right, one character like uses this ability, right? And the roots kind of come up and they destroy this area around it. So like now there's this like area of like deeply rootedness. Like it's hard to.
We
move
know we don't
around,
want to
like,
go there.
All of that stuff, right? You take more damage in there, all that extra stuff. So the majority of the people see that. Oh, I'm gonna try to avoid that. They run around it, right? Then out of nowhere, this root comes out the middle and grabs somebody, right? Now, the second that thing grabs you, tension occurs, right? We haven't even gotten to the part where I start talking about the movement, because traditionally, grappled in 5th edition, your speed is 0.
Yeah.
You just can't move.
No,
anymore,
I got
right?
you. Yeah.
That's not the case here. This one specifically, it's you cannot move further away from the center, period.
But you can
Right?
okay, so
but
you can move
still
forward.
move around in the perimeter.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
you can like walk around in like a circle, but the second you get closer to it, that thing pulls top.
Right, it'll only
Right?
let you get closer. It won't let you go further
exactly.
away. Okay,
And so like that's the mentality. So
okay.
and it makes sense because the thing's constantly like trying to pull you, and if you make it easier for it, then you're gonna make it easier for it. Whatever.
Right.
So as that's happening, and that also falls in line with if it misses you, it's just constantly
right,
dragging
okay.
itself back in. Anyways, so if that's what's happening, there's constantly tension, right? And so either, again, like if it's just grabbing my leg, if it's just grabbing onto my arm, and it's just constantly pulling me, either I can try and fight it, or I can not try and fight it. And like I can allow myself to get drug with it. Now, if I do that, I can focus on other things. Like say I'm a spellcaster and I'm trying to like concentrate on a spell, or if I want to like gather something up, and I will just let it do what it's got to do.
So if
I'm
we're
doing
saying that
whatever
it
else.
begins pulling you, so you're basically saying that it's always pulling on you, and at the end of your turn you're going to essentially
you're going to end up at the end of the 10 feet.
If that's the case, though, then I would have to say that if you're going to attack, then you have disadvantage.
It's
because you are always in tension, you're always in movement, and you're constantly being moved. No matter what attack you do, it should have disadvantage.
Now I would say that's
I see where you're trying to go with.
Only because it's not pulling you that like
but
it's not like
but-
so
but-
significant of a pull that
I'm not trying to like poke holes, but what I'm trying to we're trying
I'm
to talk
here for
about the
that.
mechanics of it is, if you're going from the thing of it's not like gonna do an effort at you like on a turn, if it's just a constant,
it's not like yanked.
but if it's going to be that constant, all fighting requires good footwork. If your footwork if you can't move anywhere but closer, if the enemy isn't facing, like if you're not facing it to attack the enemy, you're basically it's like you're fighting it. Every time I pull, I'm getting slightly away from you. My swing is automatically going to not be what it should be. I would be off balance. I'm just saying that logistically what you're saying,
and
it would lead me to believe that the other actions wouldn't be as valid, because if it's a constant pull, my only thought will now be the vine. It won't ever be, I'm okay getting pulled, because it's a constant pull. I would even say like that would even be hard. I wouldn't say it would ruin concentration, but it's hard to believe that you're just chill.
There are elements of, again, the extraordinary. You look at anime, you look at all kinds of other forms of media. There are plenty of times where people are wrapped up in whatever, and they're just letting it happen to them. My thought process in a situation like this is, our characters at the place that they're at are adept enough to maintain their fighting with an annoyance such as this occurring.
So let me ask you this then.
Go ahead.
Why are you requiring it to be a chosen action? Like again, no matter when it happens, what benefit or problem, like what benefit do you foresee, or what problem are you solving by requiring this to be a decided action and not just it's going to pull you're gonna like I'm just saying the pull's gonna happen. That roll is just going to happen to resist, right? It's going to be a save roll, like a spell. It's a save spell, like you said before. It's a spell. It's going to go off at the end of your turn. It should just be a standard save. Why is me deciding not to do those other actions or deciding to resist? Why is deciding to resist a choice? Like, I'm just curious. So from your point of view, why not just let that be an automatic roll regardless of when it happens? Why force it to be a choice?
And that's what I was trying to articulate with everything I've been saying thus far is I think that the reason why it's a choice is because you can choose to use your effort and energy to do other things if you choose not to. So you get an advantage by letting it happen, and you get a disadvantage by trying to prevent it, right? So it's like, hey, I can have the advantage of staying here in combat, but the disadvantage of no longer having my bonus action. I can have the advantage of having my bonus action, but the disadvantage of not being in the position that I was originally in. Whichever one I find more valuable at this moment in time, I get to use that, right? I got this basically deck of cards in my hand, and I get to choose what's the most valuable for me. When you're playing Texas Hold'em, you use the most valuable cards in your hand to get the best hand, and like that's the mentality that I want to give.
I see what you're. Yeah, I see that you're just really trying to make the player agency at optimum here, but I think it's convoluting it. I think in gameplay, I just don't think it would be as useful in terms of having all of those options and having to choose whether or not I'm going to attack or not because I am getting pulled. I don't know if having those options benefits and creates more value than just knowing that there's going to be a resistance, and you're just going to go for the roll and hope that you do resist it, right? I think sacrificing an attack to resist it,
but that's the thing, you wouldn't.
But you're basically trying to say, like, I either can do my things and get pulled, or resist it and not do my things. But if you're in a position to, say, attack and do things, you're going to lose position to attack and do things. But if you're not going to attack and do things to keep the position, you're keeping the position because you want to attack and do things, right? Like, so what I'm saying is, like, if you and me are like face to face and I can attack you and this thing's going to pull me, I can choose not to get pulled. I can choose to get pulled and be able to attack you with my action. But if I want to be here in combat and I don't want to be moved next round, I have to not attack you to stop myself. So next round I can attack you.
That's what I'm saying is you have 5 options of things that you can do with your turn, and what I'm doing is I'm allowing you to do both. I'm allowing you to do both, and I'm allowing you to be able to say, hey, I want to stay here so I can resist, and I want to attack, so I'm going to attack, right? And so it's like, a lot of what you're doing is like, I'm going to be able to attack no matter what. At the end of my turn, I can choose to resist or not. And if that means I leave your area, then I leave your area, whatever, it's fine. But if it means that I get to stay here and stay in combat with you for the next round of combat so that I can still be prepared, because I need to make sure that I can take you out or whatever the case may be. But
why not just make it a saving throw that they can choose not to save? Like, why not just do that? Again, why make it a conscious, like, effort that they have to make a choice? Why not just say, at the end of your turn, it's going to try to pull you. You can save and stay and try to stay where you are, or not. But that's like, I guess I'm just trying to say is why it sounds more complicated when you could just say, at the end of your turn, this is going to happen. You can choose to do it. You could choose to try to save, or you can let it pull you.
Again, I think it comes down to, early we were talking about, again, I feel like a lot of saving throws and the stuff is just, it's used all the time. It's like, it's what you always have. It's always a saving throw. It's always a this or that. But like, if I'm actively, and that's to me the difference between a saving throw and a check. A saving throw,
whatever you
is
want
when
to call it, right?
No, but to me, it makes the difference is because a saving throw happens to you. Saving throw is not going to be initiated by you. And a saving throw doesn't really take anything from you. When you're initially getting attacked by this and you have that saving throw, you're not using your reaction. You're just making a saving throw. When you're intentionally putting effort to do something, that's something that I'm taking the agency. I'm taking the decision. I'm saying, hey, this is what I'm gonna do, right? Like, this is something that I'm gonna be active about rather than something that that just happened to me. And I think that makes the difference between just, hey, a saving throw at the end of the turn. Like, a lot of the spells we're talking about, think about Hold Person. You get to make a saving throw from that because that's something that's happening to you. You have no control over that. You're just trying to resist it from happening in the first place. In this situation, it's like, yes, the pull is occurring, But what I'm saying is, because it's a constant. It's a little bit different than something that is.
But whole person would be a constant.
Whole person is, yes, it's a constant, but it's not like when you think about whole person and how it affects a person. It's not like the person is ever just like, oh, I'm comfortable in this whole person. I'm just hanging out here. Like, it's whole person. I guess. Technically,
it's perspective.
Technically, you could do it to.
I mean, because you don't have to save out of a hold person. I mean, again,
it's
like
any saving throw you can technically choose to fail.
Exactly.
Theoretically.
And so all I'm saying is that I see where you're going. I think we're arguing the same point. We're both trying to get to the same thing. I just think that in the vein of trying to make things not as we see this all the time, therefore I want to do something new. I think this might be getting too complicated, is all my perspective is.
Yeah.
I just think that I know what you're trying to do, and I'm not saying that I disagree with trying to do an alternative to a saving throw. I just think that the direction, like, again, for me as a player, right, coming into this and trying to use this, I wouldn't use the options because for me, it's like, I'm just going to attack it. I'm just going to attack it until it's dead because I want it off the battlefield. I want it to stop affecting me. And for me to pick and choose and plan my actions to whether or not I want to stay in this one spot, 5 feet, 10 feet of movement, I'm going to recoup that on my next turn. The moment the thing's dead, I'm right back in action. The other thing we haven't talked about, which is also really interesting, when it does pull you, does it provide an opportunity attack for the enemies?
Force movement, according to the rules as written, did not provide an opportunity attack.
That's a shame because it should.
That's again,
but no, it is a shame that force movement. I guess because pushing, if someone shoves you, I think this one would be interesting though, to make an argument because again, it's forceful, but it's not like instantaneous. Like you said, it's the whole time.
That is fair.
It's more akin to movement.
I
than
do
it
feel like
is
there
to like
is
a shove.
an argument for that.
So again, I'm not saying that you're wrong. Obviously, it's never about right or
for
wrong.
Sure.
But as a player, not even from a DM. Like as a DM, obviously we just run our games different, so I would just organize it different for my organization. But as a player, to be honest, as a player being given this as a spell, and again, true, because as a player giving the spell, I don't really care about any of those. Like, oh, so they can do all of that. That's fine. Whatever.
Right.
That's on you. I'm using it against you. But if a player, as a player being on me, to be completely honest, with all of those options, the highest economy is because think about this too. Escape basically doesn't value anything. You're using, if you get out, you're still in your same spot, but if you resisted, you're still in your same spot. But the enemy is still up. It can attack again versus if you're resisting it, it's only still locked on you.
I think the difference
is... But attacking, it's still an enemy, so even if
you escape, you don't have your action anymore.
Right.
If you resist... you still have your action. I think that's the biggest, and that's a DPS significant action economy difference.
But again, in the case of there's still an enemy on the battlefield, especially with only like a couple hit points and a low AC, I just think that the standard would be very, very situational. Would I never just straight out attack it? You know what I mean? Like I'd have to be in stupidly good positioning to want to consider fighting again. Like for me, it's almost too situational. I think as a player, I would, if it were on me, I'd probably just default to attacking it because it's also dependent upon, as a player, I wouldn't expect to get this a lot, right? Like from a player's point of view, I may run into this once or twice. Like, how often is an enemy going to have this exact spell?
Sure.
So for me, as a player, I'd probably also attack it because in the moment, the first time, maybe the second time I see it, I'm probably just not going to put that much forethought. But as the person using it, like I said before, this whole this whole discussion's kind of null because at the end of the day, I don't care. As the player using this spell, I'm just choosing that enemy. That enemy right there, he's getting grappled. But you're like, you know what I can do, right? I'm like, I don't care. He's grappled. Do whatever the fuck you want this round. You're the one benefiting from these choices as the DM, as the enemy. And realistically, I can't ever really say that you're doing anything wrong benefiting yourself and your organization because at the end of the day, unless you use this against your players more than once, it's not going to matter. None of this is going to matter.
Again, I think that the discussion points that are being brought up, whether they are pedantic or matter, so to speak, they are the reason why I put what I put there.
Right.
And so to me, the discussion, it still rings relevant because, you know, I have a mindset where it's like, honestly, we're talking about the difference between 2 options and 3 options.
Yeah.
That's honestly all we're talking about.
Yeah, it's whether to make that thing just automatic.
Basically, adding one option is really that much more
And
complicated than adding another piece of
it's
initiative.
an automatic roll versus a
So,
decision roll.
I think the honest difference is, I think the being able to choose how it goes and being able to have the balance and being able to say, hey, I can do whatever it is that I need to do in this scenario, and I'm not limited to just attacking and then just being either I do a really good job with my saving throw or I suck, right? Now, granted, that's the case no matter what you're doing, but at the very least, if I have these 3 options, then I got to choose which one I did.
Yeah.
Right?
And for me, I like the idea of, if it's going to happen anyway, I'd rather that roll be separate from my choices, because that roll's going to happen anyway. I don't want it to take up my action economy. I want my action economy to basically be 100% what I'm doing.
And I just don't want to give them that extra economy for free.
Yeah, and that's, I guess, yeah, that's really like the difference is I
think it's more balanced when it costs you something.
I mean, I definitely say
instead
that
of just getting it for free.
Yeah, and overall the build is a lot better. I like this build a lot better because realistically, this is the only thing that we've really disagreed on is just this one particular aspect of when the pool happens.
Right. So there are a couple more.
Although I would say that you've got to add something, whether now or later. What happens when they get to the middle? I know the whole point is to get them in the middle, and it's supposed to be a low key, like that's all it's supposed to do. But now that we're like getting to that point to where it is kind of building up to getting them there, even if like it doesn't do any damage, what I would almost like to see is now that it's pulled them in, right? Well, if it's that long to grab them and it finally pulled them in, what I would almost like to see is, if they've resisted it or couldn't resist, if they haven't resisted it or if they couldn't get out, by the time it pulled them 10 feet and then 10 feet, now that it's in the center, the next turn, instead of being pulled, I want it to like try to wrap them up. At the end of their next turn, they have to fight against it actually grappling
like
them.
restraining them or something like that.
Or official grapple, like an actual grapple. And then the next round is a full restrain. And then maybe the next round is like, now you're suffocating. Now you have X number of rounds to be released.
Right.
Like that could add some interesting dynamic because, you have to, if someone keeps failing, the party is now responsible.
Right.
So again, throwing this at the players, not you. But
Yeah.
imagine that. Imagine you threw that at the players and someone just kept failing and they're like, guys, I'm fully grappled. I'm fully restrained now.
Like I said, I think that might definitely be something that could be cool at higher levels, ways to like add on to this, make it more powerful. Again, especially at level 2, my mindset when I'm creating this is, it sucks to me when I'm a player and I have a feature and it feels fully useless.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like the second I use it, like I love the spell Spike Growth. It's got so much fantastic potential. Almost every single time I use it, I just run around it. For 2 seconds, the people it goes underneath, great, they did some damage, and now everyone just avoids the area the whole time. Like, what are you supposed to do with that? Unless you have additional ability to have crowd control, to like move people to battlefield, whatever, it's not really going to do much.
Yeah.
And so, unless you have something like the spell Spirit Guardians for a cleric, that you cast it on the player and it just moves around with them. So I get to choose when you get affected by it. I just got to run closer to you and then boop, now you get affected by it. So being able to move it kind of helps. But again, if they can see where it's being moved to, then guess what? They can just run around it again. So it doesn't really freaking matter. So, but if I have a way to like pull people into it, if I could like post my melee fighters inside here, and so I pull it in and then they get engaged with the melee fighters, and now even though it doesn't do anything to you while you're in here, you're now engaged with the melee fighters, so you have to risk an opportunity attack leaving their engage zone, and now I can use it to grab somebody else in, and just I have like my paladin and my barbarian sitting in the middle of this rooted area, and then I like grab somebody and pull them in. I grab
So
somebody
this is
and pull
actually
them in.
this
I
is
grab
so
somebody and pull them in.
wait a
Like,
second, wait a
that's
second,
my
wait a second. Let's
mindset
back up here though,
in
because
in a crowd.
this is a spell, right?
This is not a spell. This is a class feature.
Or a class feature.
Yeah.
So
it's just an innate ability
you haven't.
can do
So
once per combat.
do you get to choose when it lets go? Because you keep saying that I grab, pull, I grab, pull, I grab, pull, but I thought this was it grabs someone and until it's dead, it's holding on to them. Like,
No.
there's never been a mention anywhere so far that the
So
caster can.
I did mention it. I did mention it briefly. It's not the caster initially lets it go, but once they reach the middle, that's when the rope lets them go. So either they escape before they get to the middle, or they get to the middle and then the vine lets it go, and then the caster can then use it again on other people. Like. That's when it lets them go. So it pulls them all the way to the center, so they have the furthest to travel to get out of the difficult terrain area.
Gotcha.
Right. So it just makes it harder for them to run away and things of that nature. Like that's generally the idea. It's like, hey, let me get you stuck in the mud and then make it harder for you to get out of the mud.
Right,
with all
right.
the guys beating you up and hitting you.
And there's nothing stopping the vine from grabbing you again once you're basically out.
Once you're out, yes. Yeah, it's like, oh, you want to, and you bring you right back in type deal. But that's only if there's only one person you're fighting or whatever the case may be. You have to focus on one person at a time. So it'd be great if it was just one person, you know. It'd be super easy. But then again, you wouldn't really use this if there was just one person, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it's very versatile for the caster. I think, yeah, I think once you have it in a session, it will make more sense what is the most, like, because again, all of the choices are really coming down to what choices do you want to fight against it, right? Because it's going to be you fighting against this spell. You know, it's going to be your players using it, and how can they use it. But the logistics of how to not be affected by it are really going to fall on you. So, treating yourself as one of the players, giving yourself agency with this spell on top of giving them all of the ability to use it. If you're going for that kind of balance too, and just making sure that you have as much, like you're not making it too OP for them to use. I mean, that's also kind of probably a prism that you have to look at it from.
So, to be honest, like, if I'm envisioning, like, its use, like, I'm envisioning, like, say they try to use it on a barbarian or somebody that's, like, stronger than normal or whatever the case may be. Imagine him just, you grapple him, and now he can't technically move further away from it, but at the same time, the whole purpose is for you to bring him in. But imagine he's engaged with somebody, he's fighting somebody, so he doesn't really need to go anywhere, and so he just sits there and he uses his bonus action, because for the most part, barbarians don't have a whole lot of use for their bonus action. They just sit there and wail on this dude because they want to get as much DPS out of this person as possible, and they just, as just a power move, ignore your little vine that's trying to pull you, because there's athletics is so high that they're likely not going to be able to do anything. But they don't want to use their whole action economy to pull it off, and they don't want to waste any DPS on the vine.
So again,
versus the player, like
not to poke holes, but more things that you're saying that I'm just pointing out. So you're saying, like, in that particular case, right? So you're saying that in one respect you want to empower the caster to have crowd control and be able to move the people, but at the same time you want the people to be able to decide their own crowd control, right? The effective,
like how
so you want to give the caster, your players, the ability to crowd control. You want to give the crowd the ability to control back, but like,
not
in
control
that
back,
well control themselves, like have the choice not to be crowd controlled. So it is interesting that there's like a
there
back
will
and
still
forth.
be an element of control. It's just you'll get to determine the severity.
But in the example you use, the barbarian like doesn't want to go anywhere because he's wailing on it, so he's going to resist it. But in that also scenario, isn't everybody else also trying to focus and wail on the barbarian?
Not necessarily. Like, who knows who else is out there? Maybe there's a caster that they need to get down more importantly than this barbarian. and the only person that can take down that caster is the cleric or something. But this barbarian has got the cleric engaged, and so he's the one just beating. So like there could be a million different reasons or whys, depending upon the strategy, depending upon the situation. I imagine somebody going into like a bandit camp or something like that, and they got shamans, they got ranged characters, they got big brutes, they got all different types and flavors of characters, and you're out here trying to figure out what's best strategically to overcome this scenario. You don't know who's here, who should you focus on. Like this vine is going to be more advantageous against like a small weak character than it is against a big heavy barbarian, right? So even though it might be advantageous to you to stop that barbarian from chasing after somebody, at the very least I can make you waste some action economy in order to do so, right? Even if I don't pull you in, I can help in a little bit of ways. A lot of the times when a druid, you do conjure animals, a lot of the reason is those guys, you can create 8 little creatures. These are damage sponges. They will make somebody focus their attack where it would hit one of the party members on just basically using your action economy as best as possible, helping control the battlefield. That's what I really feel like support characters are really beneficial for. And so if like I can find ways to help this particular character be more valuable in their role, be more valuable as a support character, be more valuable to help other people waste their action economy. Hey, you don't get to use all of your attacks attacking this person. You have to use one of them attacking my vine. Hey, you have to use your entire attack action. You have to use your entire action to escape this in order to get this guy that's running away. You're just out of reach. I stopped you 5 feet before you got to be engaged with them so they can move away from you without worrying about an attack of opportunity. Like, there's a lot of like little ways that this can be very advantageous, even though, they have all these different options to do different things. So it's like, okay, to me, we were talking the other day about, how to make gameplay a little bit more dynamic, how to like be able to plan different things, be able to strategize, be able to. This to me gives more depth to the play, more mindset to the strategy. It's like it's not just one-sided. All right, I'm just gonna wail on things as much as I can. Well, I could just sit here and wail, but would I get more out of focusing my energy over here, just using my bonus action to resist? Would I get more? Would I potentially imagine it's the difference between 1 hit point left, right? But I have to use that other attack. If I had used it on the vine, guess what? That guy's living, and maybe he's got Dimension Door. Maybe he can get out of there. Maybe the fact that you attacked it means that the bad guy gets to live, right? And maybe if you just use your bonus action and just resisted, he would have died, and you wouldn't have to worry about him going and telling the king who knows whatever. I don't know what the scenario is, but like there's a lot of depth to the gameplay when you have more to think about than just, oh, I'm gonna swing him until he's dead. Like that's how I want to bring a little bit more strategy, but a little bit more intellect into why I'm doing what I'm doing. Like I have to think, okay, yes, I'm using this on this character, but he has these options. Like it could work, but it could not work. Like eventually when you get a high enough level, it's kind of meta knowledge, but also not. Like if I've had enough experience with dragons, I understand that they have legendary resistances. And I can understand that, yeah, I can cast this on you this many times. Well, guess what? I'm going to cast this and almost force you to waste your legendary resistance. And I'm going to do it intentionally so that later when I want to cast something else on you, you don't have it to use, right? Same thing here. I'm going to use this and I'm going to cast it on you to force you to use some of your action economy to deal with this so that you don't have it to use on my squishy wizard that you're really close to, right? Like there's different elements in which I feel like having these options and these choices available to the enemy can make the character using it have to think differently about what the gameplay is. And that's kind of my heart behind why I like the way that this is currently laid out. I like the options that are given to both the other person receiving the vine and the person using it. it's like the knight in chess being able to jump over pawns. It's like, oh, I gotta watch out for that thing. Oh, that thing can do some scary stuff, or whatever the case may be. Type deal. That's kind of my heart behind why I like putting this particular setup the way that it is. If that kind of makes sense.
No, yeah, absolutely. And if it works, I mean, again, if it works for the setting that it's going into, and if it works for the players, right?
I'm hoping so. But again, I would also like it to be as versatile as possible, if that makes sense. And I know 100% it's not going to work for everybody. Yeah. It's not going to fit into every game, because every game is... I don't like this terminology. Every game is homebrewed.
Well, it's not even just, it's not even that approach too. It's also the complexity of gameplay. Like, some players just get overwhelmed easy. Some players just need to know straight, like, hey, bonus actions are for healing, attack actions are for damage. Like, some players are that straightforward. Like I said, as a player myself, me, I love options. I love playing with things.
Yeah.
But for me, I like playing with things in the situation that I need to, whereas if I have so many set options, giving me so many choices will allow me to think, but it also will allow me to take time. Like, I'm just sitting there going, okay,
and I do
hold on, because I would sit there and be like, okay, well, I could attack twice, okay, but I could do this and I could just resist it. But if then I attack it, and then if I attacked it once, I could technically kill it, get it off the battlefield, then I could turn around and attack it. So for me, I know me. And I guess that's why I'm prefacing it not as a DM to DM, but as a player, knowing how I would approach this. If it were being used on me, either A, it's not going to be used on me enough times for me to get that far into it, because it's going to happen once or twice. And I'm like, oh yeah, that thing that you attacked me with before, that's that same thing. Oh, I'm just going to kill it. Like, it's not going to be an investment into my personal player thought, because I'm not going to see it often enough. And it is kind of weak, like in the sense of it is a low enough level spell,
very much so,
or a feat, class feat, that for me, I just, as a player, I wouldn't put much thought into it as you've planned for. But again, that's one situation. As throwing it at the players and seeing it as a DM from them using it against the enemies, I also just in high point prefer the kind of randomness more of dice rolls, because A, I have to make less decisions myself, and the dice rolls tell a better story. I like the idea of, again, instead of me having to make another choice for bonus feat or not to stay put, my idea is, well, it's going to pull him anyway. If he gets to stay, the roll says it. I get the idea of, it's cliche. Yeah, it's another saving throw. I totally understand wanting to do something different, and I'm not against something different. It's really the way that we approach how it should be different. I don't mind it being more than just a saving throw or just a resistance, but I just feel, for me, if you added it in as a, by the way, you could also, I'm just gonna be like, let me just, and that's me as a player. Some other players are very much like you, where they're like, whoa, hold on. Like even Lucifer is like that, because he plays more from the book background of I can research before I play, like, because that's his kind of gameplay, right? He wants to read, he wants to research, he wants to know every in and out before he touches something. Your build is much more designed for a player like him, because he would look at that and go, okay, so what can I do with this? I can attack it, or I can resist. So resist is a different. He would get into that and strategically plan out every little move, even if it's only going to be the very one time he's ever going to see it. That's his level of gameplay. So, like you said before, it's really just dependent upon who's going to get it, and the gameplay. It's even possible you present this to your players, and in the moment you're like, I'm going to do it a different way now, because it's just, you may just in the moment be like, yeah, none of it works. I need to do it something completely different.
Honestly, just like we were talking before we even started going over this, you look at something for a while and it makes perfect sense to you when you're writing it down, and then you take some time and take a step back and look at it later, and you're like, no, I got to change that. I got to change that. I got to change.
Yeah.
So it's very likely that it might not end up manifesting the way I imagine it to in my mind, but at the end of the day, you work with what you've got. You work with what makes sense at the time. And so, this thus far makes the most sense to me.
Well, and that's the most important part right there. It makes the most sense to you, the DM who's going to be implementing it. I mean, the first rule is you have to be able to use it, right? Like, you don't want to implement something that, again, this is why we talk about beyond the book. You don't want to implement something because you're told you have to. or that doesn't make sense. I mean, how many times have we read something from the book and we both go, "The fuck does that mean? Why? Like that doesn't make like." It's that's the idea behind it. If it makes sense to you, go with it. Because it's going to make your game more have more continuity. It's going to be a more clean narration for you. Your rule sets are going to be more consistent. But when it comes to wanting to be accessible, there's nothing you can do to make it accessible to people. I mean, someone's always going to have a problem with it. Someone's always going to love it, and really it's putting it into test, right? Like I like the idea, and I always like finding creative ways around the mundane, right? I would do a saving throw because A, it just matches second edition better, and B, that's just clean to me because I like the idea of the dice tell the story.
And I get
but
that.
I'm 100% behind the idea of saving throws are cliche and we always see them, and I don't just want them to just you want the player choice to have more meaning than the player dice roll. You don't want them to be like, "Oh, I got moved because I had a bad dice roll." You want them to go, "You know what? I chose to fight it. I chose to try to fight it and I failed." Like, you want them to have more ownership of the failure instead of the blame it on the dice. And I get that feeling. This particular way just doesn't jive with me. But what does that mean? That means practically nothing because A, I don't really like game with it. Like, I'm not going to be gaming with it. And B, it doesn't change the narrative unless all of a sudden you bring it to your players and all of them go, "Well, it should be this way." But then that's their input. It's not me going, "Haha, I was right." It's, no, that was their input. It may be equal, again, but that's your input with your game and your players. And that's really, I think, like, again, the beauty of all of this is why I love doing this, is because I love just, again, I don't want to call it arguing because it's not arguing. I love discussing and getting into the weeds of this debate about, again, I don't even like to call it a debate because a debate would like, I know it's mostly opinion, but a debate usually
implies
stacks
opposite sides.
I think a debate usually stacks value. Why is my argument better than yours? Is a debate. It's not saying that you're right, I'm wrong. I think a debate's more of, here's why my argument holds more weight and why it's more valuable. If we were talking about who has the more valuable approach, I could argue, doing a saving throw is more in line with the books, and it's more easily, everybody understands it, easy to say. Like, we can make all of that. That's a debate, trying to convince you why my argument has more merit. But this is more of a, I see where you're going with it. I wouldn't do it myself. Here's the way I would do it. You don't like it? That's fine. What do you think? That's like that. That's really, I think, again, what we like to do here.
What I like the most is it's less about, oh, I would do it this way and I would do it this way, but it's more like, hey, this is how I see it, and this is where I find value, and it's imagine think about it, like if someone were to, and maybe you do, I've heard this go around on social media. Should girls get guys flowers, right? Right? Now, here's the deal. When a guy gets girls flowers, what kind of value do they see in those flowers, right?
Yeah.
They feel appreciated, they feel this, they feel that. I don't necessarily feel that the majority of men would get the same value out of getting flowers that a girl is going to get from getting flowers, which is why it's not the norm on that front. And so it's like, but it's not to say that there isn't value in it.
Regardless of, the source of that, whether it's a socio-economical thing, if it's a cultural thing, regardless. But you're right. Like, there's a concept of affectionate language, right? Everybody has their own affectionate language, and it's funny when you start to learn about this, because when you learn about and I mean, affectionate language is not like, anything sexual. The language of affection really basically comes down to, everyone has their own way of showing people how they have affection. Some people give gifts, some people write cards, some people hug, some people spend time, just spend time with each other. Some people call, some people text. Some people, go on trips. Like,
some people send memes or TikToks or whatever.
Some people buy you dinner. They just buy you, so they take you out. Like, everybody has their own thing, and it's funny because when you start to learn about this, it opens up your mind to how to talk to people, because a lot of the times, especially in relationships, you see issues where it's not that they're not on the same page, but they're reading two different languages. Like, they're literally reading the same book, they're on the same page, but they're literally reading it from two translations. So whereas a holiday comes up and one goes out of their way to make a gift and the other one goes to the store and buys a gift, a lot of people assume, well, the person, like the social response is the person who bought the gift is lazy or less interested. But the reality of it is there could have been just as much time, effort, and emotion
And thought.
and thought put into that purchase as there was every painstaking moment of that created card that was, you know, Fabergé and calligraphy and scrapbook. We assign those values to the things we do and the things that we like. So the person who bought that gift probably sat there for weeks, researched it, dropped little clues, did all of the thought, put their heart and soul into this and bought them this gift because they thought they would like it. The other person just spent hours making something that they thought they would like. Now, at the end of the day, both of them appreciate what they get, right? They appreciate the perceived value, that what you did for me, right? But the disconnect comes from not understanding that language. Like, oh, this is cool. You like wrote on a card for me. Like, it's not saying I don't think you love me. That's where people get it wrong. It's like, oh, you must not love me because you didn't do it my way. But when you understand the language, it's more of a, wow, you spent time on this. That's where you need to learn how to appreciate it. Whereas if you look at it from your own love language of, you didn't spend any money on this.
You didn't spend any money. You didn't research.
And it's not a bad, you know, it's not that they're looking at you of, oh, you're cheap. How dare you? It's more of a, but their love language is hurt because they're like, I don't know how to show love, but to spend money. That's their love language. So if they don't get the same, so if you, but it's not the amount, because if you turned around and then bought them a small, like those kind of people who do gifts, if you buy them something randomly, that means so much more to them than any other like show of affection, because that's their language, right?
And the thing is, the thing that I love about this is that it's not that anyone has any more value than the other, and if the partner is willing. And this is what I find incredibly important about relationships. Both parties need to be willing to learn the other person's language.
Exactly.
Right?
Or at least be aware of it, because if you're not aware of that language, like again, there may be a love language where they never buy you something, they never make you something, they don't talk to you a lot. Like they don't say the sweet things, and maybe you're sweet, you know, maybe your love language is talking. Maybe you're constantly giving out pet names, maybe you're constantly telling them how good they look, maybe you're just giving compliments, maybe you're just talking sweet all the time and they never do that. But they're always touching you. They're always holding your hand in public, cuddling on the couch, ever. So if you always look at, oh, well, you never say it, so you must not mean it, right? Oh, well, you never cuddle with me, so you must not like. If you always look at it from your language, you're gonna find that you think that you're not linking. But when you realize, oh, I don't talk a lot, but you always come in and talk to me. Well, I don't touch a lot, but you always touch me. Once you learn, like, you don't have to learn the language to speak the language. But once you catch on that there is another language,
it becomes
an
element of understanding, and that's what I was trying to bring it back to. What we were talking about is like, what we do here is much less of, you know, oh, I need you to give me what I want, or you need me to give you what you want. And it's more like, hey, I'm just expressing, hey, this is where I see value, and this is why I see value.
Right.
And you do the same. You express to me where you see value and why you see value. And, you know, a lot of the times, you know, I struggle to see a different perspective. I see it from another side. And so that can be challenging. But regardless of what we're doing, like, that's the goal. The goal is to be like, hey, I want to see things from a different perspective. I want to see why somebody else is coming from the place they're coming from, because then I can do so much more with that.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I'm super here for it. I'm super here for it.
I like
no
it.
matter
And
what.
that pushed us to 2.5 hours. We didn't even get to the other spells. Like,
I know.
just your modifications pushed to 2.5 hours.
Almost done, not 100% done, but the last piece that I wanted to mention, just because I thought it was a nice little, if you do destroy it because for whatever reason take it down to 0 hit points, it basically almost instantly, just wherever it's at, it just falls to the ground and starts to decompose, right? So like it just falls dead and limp like it's no longer revived and starts to decompose for 1d4 rounds, and you can't use it again until those 1d4 rounds are over.
I thought it was a short rest.
So just the not the entire area, just the vine.
Oh.
So whereas if it missed, it would only take the 2 rounds to get back to the center. If it if you destroy it, it takes 1d4 rounds for you
to recompose and grow back.
For you to use another one.
Okay.
Again.
I don't dislike that. I think that makes sense because you can still only use the cover the ground spot the once per day. But for the turn, you can keep resummoning the vine.
Yeah, just so there's some sort of consequence. So if they destroy it, you're not instantly using it again.
It basically just doesn't turn instantly into Thorn or the spell you were talking about before. It's like
exactly.
Spiked Growth. Like, it doesn't just turn into Spiked Growth the moment you kill the vine. Like it will come back.
Yes,
to
exactly.
Okay. Yeah, no, I like that too.
But yeah, those were the only other real changes that I made so far. I would like to. I plan on going through the rest of the episode that we went through and seeing if there's any. Because I remember thinking to myself, there's definitely some other changes I want to make to some of the later features. But I'll go through that eventually. But yeah.
I do like the idea, especially if you can stack this with other spells. Like, can you imagine being able to stack this on top of Spike Growth?
Yes, I can.
Like, that would be more interesting too, is to talk about like what this would look like being stacked on other stuff and making this much more of an interesting like crowd control for combat.
Yeah, because I think being able to like put this on top of something like Spike Growth would again that feeling that I have like, oh, it sucks to use this spell. Well, now I can put that spell up, maintain concentration on it, and still have this thing out and like being able to like use it and actually feeling like I get some use out of Spike Growth, right? So not only do we have the regular, now I would say, because here's the thing, Spike Growth is technically difficult terrain, and the Deeply Rooted is difficult terrain. So,
but Deeply Rooted doesn't cause damage. Spike
Deeply
Growth
Rooted,
would
correct.
add the damage.
But the question is, does the stacked difficult terrain...
No. It wouldn't become impossible terrain. It would just become difficult.
No,
it's
I
still
wouldn't
different.
say impossible. I would say, like, would it go from it costs you 5 feet to cost you double that? You know what I mean? So, like,
I wouldn't think so.
I wouldn't compound. I wouldn't compound the
something like that. I wouldn't compound. But if they both did damage, I'd compound the damage.
Yeah,
but not like the ability to walk through it. It's difficult regardless.
And I very much agree with that. That was my mindset.
Now another question before we go, because we do have to cut it here. But can this be used as a utility? So let's say, because it's 25 feet, right? Is the distance, and how far can you cast it? Like 30 feet from where you can see?
What is the range? 60 feet.
So
within range, yeah.
Let's say I wanted to get up to a ledge that's 25 feet, 30 feet above me. Can I just cast it and go, grab me? Literally have it just whip down and grab my characters and at every round pull me 10 feet into the sky and pull me over a ledge?
I would say because it resets on like a short or long rest, that would be okay.
Because then you'd have one turn, which is 10 minutes to pull 6 party members up. It travels, 10 feet every round. So yeah, you could get a whole party up a 25-foot 30 ledge. Yeah. 25 feet because it has to be able to grab you. Yeah. So yeah, you could have a ledge that's roughly 25 feet, and you could probably use this utility.
So I will say,
because it doesn't do damage, right?
We talked about it a little bit. Correct, it doesn't do damage except for if you're in the aura and you get hit, you'll take a little bit of extra damage.
Right.
But, I will say we talked a little bit about where we can cast this and
like what surfaces.
Yes, like places you can cast.
I would say on any. I would put it on any natural, like non-stone surface. So basically, as long as it's not basically like rock. Any natural surface. So as long as there's basically dirt, mud, as long as there's some kind of earth there, even if it's rocky, but there's still more earth than rock, I would still let it find its way.
Yeah.
I would say, like, if you're in the middle of a cave, maybe if you're way, way deep and there's just literally nothing but rock, maybe not. But if I would say maybe this, rule of thumb, if there's any natural growth, then you can.
And see, that's how I feel about it. So the question is, if I'm in a house, can I cast it on the ceiling? Now, if the ceiling's
I
made
wouldn't
out
say
of
that.
wood,
I wouldn't say that that's ground though. I think you'd still have to have.
that's my point.
I'd say earth. You'd have to have. If it, now, granted, if you're in one of those places that have earth on top, yeah, you know, and this is like deep growth, so maybe you can make the caveat: you're not creating something, you're calling to life something.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
maybe it's not just dirt that you need. Maybe you need the presence of
Vegetation.
vegetation. So maybe it's any. So again, you're in a dungeon. It's a stinky little dungeon. Blah blah blah. But you see one little weed, like a little dandelion. Just let's go, and then you can imagine that you see a tiny little dandelion, and you're like, "Oh, guys, I just found our way out." Rip a giant fucking thing out of the like. You just all of a sudden make this giant tentacle come out of the wall,
to
and
be
then it
honest,
blasts a hole.
Like I really like the idea that you have of, and I know you call them like role play classes, like with Bard, where you just kind of basically articulate what it is that you're doing, and then it kind of happens. But like, imagine if you had a role play Bard or a role play Druid, right? Where you just, hey, you have power over plant life, and like you would be able to just say, I want to do stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like.
I think
that would be crazy.
I think allowing this to have some utility again. I think the idea of vegetation. I think it's more like you have to have vegetation within sight of 60 feet. So it can't just be dirt, right? You can't just have a dirt floor and call to life nothing, unless it's a rare thing where it's like an underground farm and there's seeds. But like as long as you can see some sort any vegetation whatsoever. This can be called to life because again, all you're doing is propagating the roots.
Would you allow a druid to carry a pack of seeds on her and then plant a seed, use druid craft to get it to start to sprout, and then use that as the roots to start it? Just so basically, because it would be a turn, you have to use a turn to prepare it.
So how about this?
Drop a seed.
How about this, bro? How about this? Let's turn this. Let's take a cue from Artificer. Why, if this is a class feat, kind of like how Artificer can magically imbue a weapon, why isn't that what this is? You can magically imbue any seed. Just have seeds on you. That way you don't have to have them have any upkeep. They can just always replenish seeds. But basically you can imbue a seed, which you can throw up to 60 feet. And as long as there is soil, and you can even say as long as there's moist soil, so you can't do it in the desert. If you don't, but whatever you want to say, you can even just say as long as there is soil, you can imbue a seed, and as long as you can put that seed in the soil. So once it hits dirt, this spell activates because basically you're cascading the growth because you're a druid. So what if that is your catalyst, and then that way if they're bound, you have yet another catalyst of gameplay. Well, I can drop it in front of me, right? All right, well here it is. I can't throw it, but fuck it. This is where it starts. But the idea is you give that small caveat of how they cast it, right? It's part of their feature because they have like kind of like an artificer. They can imbue magic, and then kind of like the Ferngully, you know, they like like the chick, the grandmother chick from Ferngully, how she does that with the seed. She does the seed and then she puts it in, covers it up, and immediately grows.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So what if that's the power though? What if that's how you explain it? Instead of it just being like a snap of your fingers, what if it's kind of like casting a spell? Your material component is you need a seed, and you have a natural ability to imbue it, just like an artificer would. And if you want to make this more into the role play, tie that in because it's like the artificer. If you imbue a seed, this is your effect. But you can also use it to imbue other things and get random effects. Now, not like the same combat,
right.
But what if the utility is you see a dying plant? Well, can I use that utility for today and regrow that plant? Can I use this utility to speed growth a component we need? So the combat initiative, the combat use is you imbue a seed and you get this exact combat thing. But what if the utility is the imbuement? They just get this natural ability to imbue things, and that's
it's
the role
almost
play.
like the cleric's ability to turn undead, or not turn undead, channel divinity.
Yeah.
Because you use your channel divinity to turn undead or do other things. So in this situation, you could use your druid feature to use, what do they call it? Deeply rooted, or you could use it to do something else.
Right, and the something else is not static like this. It would be just role play opportunities once per day. They have an ability of magic, and it has to be something related to Circle of the Leaf. So they can interact. Maybe maybe it's something as simple as if they don't have the spell, maybe this one thing can make them speak with plants. They can touch any plant and imbue it, and now for 1 minute or 1 hour or 3 questions, that was their spell. So it's kind of a because you talked about that you wanted this mainly to be more about being able to play the character, more options.
Yes.
So giving that option to where I don't have the spell speak with animals and Circle the Leaf doesn't come with it standard, but once per day I can touch a plant and I can do speak with plants with one plant as long as I can touch it, because I imbued it. Maybe I can make something grow, like we've talked about before. Special ingredients.
Yes.
What if there's something that's only grows
Kinda
once
like
per
with
year?
The green burial. Yeah.
So I think that could be a fantastic utility on top of it. Have a combat use. Have a cool way that it works for combat that has this very strategic laid out plan. But when you're not in combat for that druid, that's that other option of, well, what else can I do with
I
this?
also like the ability for a very limited to be able to almost bring life to plants. So instead of hey, casting this on the ceiling to help me reach a ledge, say there's a tree that already has a bunch of vines on it. I use this ability to bring life to those vines for a minute, and those vines is what helps pull us up.
Or grow a little bit further. Hey,
exactly.
there's some vines hanging off of a ledge, but there's only one you can touch. You touch it, and the rest of them just grow, and then it's now.
Yeah.
So again, not major, but it just. Again, it just helps things grow. You could just basically make something slightly overgrown enough to be more useful now.
I do like this.
That would
idea.
that's just kind of
I
again,
do like this.
role play class feature.
Very much
That
so.
right there is a role play class feature that could have a tied in attack ability. Because I love the idea what you said about having a seed that you just put in and that's where it goes. But now I'm just why don't you just throw it? And then you get a really clever player who asks, oh, so it's not as far as I can see. It's as I can just throw a seed and it's magically imbued, so it goes up to 60 feet. Because maybe you can't throw a seed 60 feet. But they're like, well, what if I use a sling?
What if I use an arrow? It's just a seed. What if that arrow gets buried into something soil based, and it's planted as soon as it? I'm just saying.
So this is maybe this is the way to go, man. Maybe this is the way to go to make it more a feature, make it something that comes literally from them and not just a cantrip, right? Actually make it part of their character.
Bro, I just thought of an idea when I started talking about putting a seed into an arrow. I just thought of imagine if I embedded some magical seed to just behind the arrowhead tip of an arrow, and then I shoot it at somebody.
That
and as soon as
shatters.
the point of impact, it doesn't shatter, but imagine how Green Arrow has a bunch of trap arrows or whatever, but as soon as it hits them, roots grow out and around them, and maybe it nails them to a wall or roots them into place or something that.
That'd be devastating druid ability. We should talk about that because if you in High Point, if you take a druid with this similar magic and if they were multi-class into blood magic, that is what you're talking about.
I've not seen a High Point druid. I've never met a High Point druid or known anyone who's a druid. I want to know. We were talking about 2E bards. I want to know about a 2E druid. What does that even look like?
We should do that. So in the future, we are thinking about doing a new episode series where we do class comparisons.
Yes.
Where we basically go over the older version of a class and the newer version of a class and kind of just give our thoughts and opinions on the changes. Have they improved? Have they not improved? And why I prefer the second edition and older school. So I think that'll be a fun episode series we can do starting on Fridays. So we'll figure that out soon.
Definitely.
But yeah, 2E bards are okay. 2E druids are interesting.
Yeah.
We'll definitely have to talk about a 2E druid. But yeah, man, no, this is a cool idea because now I'm thinking too. This wouldn't be so much something that you would want to instill so they go after this, but maybe let's say it's getting towards level 10. They've increased it so it has more power naturally. But even just as a fun, almost plot point moment, kind of almost planned, they find either just a huge abnormal seed of some sport, or it's a special very special type of face seed, and then and of course Like, you give it to them hoping and knowing they're going to be like, what happens if I imbue this seed?
Stop.
But just for that one time. Like, it's not like something that where it's like the size of the seed actually matters, but you give them just this like ridiculous plot point item until they figure out to use it. And then you just like Jack and the Beanstalk it. Just like a fucking like a dragon made out of vines comes out or something, right? Like just give them, give them the whirl, right? If they're going to be able to use this, just randomly give them this very, very special seed that finally they just catch on. Like, am I supposed to use this with? And like, just give them a good fight to just try it and just wow them. Just give them something that they just didn't like. They're thinking it's just going to be like a much bigger version, and then just give them just something that just blows their mind and has fun. Because that sounds so cool. Where it's like, because you're just doing all these little tiny seeds. And then eventually they just get this bigger one, and then it's just something like completely fucking different. Especially if you have any kind of like special trees or seeds in your world.
Yeah.
Like only those ones would be really cool.
That would be very interesting. Ooh, that would be very interesting. I have thoughts now.
I mean, unless you want to... now we're getting more pedantic, but it would be interesting if you did have like the seed changed like the ability almost, but then you get way too into it. But you said that like, you're the circle of the leaf. So if you imagine if you just did like maybe like 3 different types, like if it's a tree seed versus a grass seed versus like a flower seed, maybe just categories. There's like a slight you could, not so much for this, but expansion, being able to like have categories of this attack based on what either what nature you hold or just what materials
imagine
you have.
if you were talking about, you can't do it in a desert. What if there's a desert version of it, and instead of like roots, it's like quicksand or like something else like that, or like it basically has
quicksand
a very
is the
similar
difficult
effect.
terrain.
Yes, quicksand.
And instead of a vine that goes out to actually a vine that would how would you get to the pull in part, which would be interesting?
I don't know.
That's a topic for another day. We're gonna keep on thinking.
Yes, I like it.
All right. Well, I think that's us. That's almost 3 hours in off of one topic. I think we're pretty good for this Monday. Well, thank you guys all for joining us on Homebrew Review for Monday. It's been fantastic. If you're joining us on Twitch, thank you for joining in the chat. If you're seeing us on YouTube, leave us a comment. Let us know what you think, especially if you have any comments about our discussion earlier about how exactly you would approach the use of the vine and the pole. We're really interested. Would you have it as a saving roll that's automatic? Would you have it as a choice like Kage wants to do? Or do you have another idea? Let us know in the comments or join the Discord. Would you mind popping that in the chat as well one more time? Or you can join the Discord and let us know your thoughts there. You can also submit your own homebrew for us to review on Mondays. We have changed our schedule, so we are Mondays at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for homebrew review, and now on Fridays at 7:30 Pacific Standard Time, where I'll either do my deep dive series or Kage will join me, and we'll be doing some other episodic series on Fridays as well. Otherwise, you can catch me on the weekends, and I'll do pop-up games. If you liked what you saw and you missed anything on today's stream, you can always watch everything that you missed or watch any of the other streams on YouTube at MisfitGamersStudios. We would like to see you there, so go ahead and subscribe and let us know what you think. Otherwise, that's it for me. I hope you all had a great start to your week. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I will see you on Friday.
Deuces, my friends.